Video is recording.
You did make one of those for me.
James, who's chairing the meeting to open?
You are.
Nope.
No, he's the alternate.
So
What, the vice chair?
Usually it would be vice chair.
Lee?
we would default to the vice chair, but Lee isn't going to be able to make it tonight. So instead of a chair calling the meeting to order, we're going to sort of have to have a, staff can let everybody know when we need to get started. Somebody can make a motion to recognize one of the 3 sitting regular board members as chair for the purpose of beginning the meeting. Because Hal is not eligible as a selectman and Bob is not eligible until he is seated because he is now an alternate. And the chair would need to be presiding to seat the alternate.
And then we'd be making a motion to seat Bob. And after that,
The chair can do that unilaterally once the chair for the meeting has been selected.
And is the election of a chair for the year or for the evening?
We're suggesting that we appoint a chair for the evening.
Okay, just double check. I like to be clear.
do you want the year?
No, I don't want the year. I made that clear a long time ago.
If the person who has been appointed chair wants to preside over the entire meeting, they're welcome to preside over the entire meeting. If they would like to recognize Bob to finish the proceedings over this case once he's been seated, they can also choose to do that.
So I'm getting confused. We need a chair for tonight, period. Just one night, right?
Correct.
And then that chair can,
If the chair wants to run the whole meeting, once the motion has happened, they can run the whole meeting. If what we really need is a chair already designated to seat Bob as an alternate. So once Bob has been seated, if they would prefer to hand things over to Bob and let him finish off this case because he's been presiding over it for the last 2 years, they can choose to hand over the chairship once he's been seated, but he can't seat himself.
Seating him as an alternate would be a vote.
It would not be. The chair can do that unilaterally.
so if somebody makes a motion, so I'll make a motion that Betty Smith chair the meeting tonight.
Second.
No, thank you.
Well, then somebody else make a motion.
Move the Tim Jennifer.
I'll be happy to do it if you make
For
a motion
tonight.
and pass it, yeah.
Second.
Unless there's
All right,
discussion.
so do I say call a vote? So let's have a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Get this over with.
Well, we had a little
You want
discussion.
discussion? Sure, discuss it all you want.
Is there any discussion on it?
Well, I would like to know if the understanding by the new chair or chair potential is it his desire to turn it over to the 2.5-year standing situation that we've worked through with Bob as the chair? I mean, or are we going a different direction with it?
Let's get him appointed and then we can figure that out. Appointed, elected, whatever we're calling it.
Anybody have anything else to say? If not, you can do a vote.
All those in favor? Raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain?
Bob doesn't have a vote yet,
Bob doesn't have a vote.
because you
Okay.
haven't seated him.
So, as chairman for the night, thank you very much. I'm just thrilled. Bob, would you be interested in chairing for tonight?
First, you need
for
to
this?
recognize him and add him to the voting designation.
You've done such a wonderful job and been head over heels into this whole thing, so we would all appreciate that.
You need to formally add him to the voting
I
designation.
need to add you to
Add me to
so
the-
we're going to add you to the voting designation, would be all the members, including Bob, that are here tonight.
Does that cover it?
So I'm added.
Yep.
Who's chair?
You are.
Okay. Was that a motion? Was it needed to be a motion?
Doesn't need to be.
I think he can just
Okay.
pass the
The
gavel.
procedures do say that the chair
Yeah. Okay.
can choose,
I
does
accept.
select.
I won't say thank you. Okay.
For the record, Mr. Chairman Pro Tem, would you, again, so everybody could hear, just
Yes.
state the voting designation, please?
Voting designation is Betty Smith, Tim Jandeber, Bob Strobel, Al Kreider, Joe McCaffrey. This is case 19-12 deliberations. Public comment and the public hearing have been closed. So we will not be taking public comment tonight. And just a note for members of the board, town staff is here. Their role is limited to pulling information and procedural questions. I think I have that right. Okay. We closed public hearing, whatever it was last time, for 1912 and went into deliberations and then continued to tonight. What I would like to do, well, what we need to do is discuss findings of fact. We have a whole bunch of topic areas that we've discussed on this case that the applicants and abutters have brought forward for our consideration. We have, this is not even the entire stack of information for consideration for this. But findings of fact are essentially what isn't been on the public record that we find, or you as an individual member find pertinent to a decision on this case. There are certain topics we've discussed, like I did the last time. I would sort of like to discuss a topic area for findings of fact. That does not mean in any way, shape, or form that you can't go back and revisit. If you have a brainstorm or forget something, you know, it was more like I would like to keep our arguments tailored to one topic of consideration at a time. Just, it's the way I work best.
That's fine.
And if we concentrate on, you know, traffic or landscaping or lighting or whatever, I don't say we have to beat it to death, but at least if we have findings of fact as far as the decision goes, it makes the record much cleaner. That being said, I'd sort of like to knock off some easy ones, easier ones, at least in my opinion. Vegetative buffer. Anyone? My opinion of it, and what I found is that they meet the regulations in a combination of the 20-foot strip, 20-foot wide strip, existing fencing, and landscaping and trees. Any one alone, the regulation does say the word "or," and I'd have to pull it up. Vegetative buffer, either vegetation or fencing. In this case, there's a combination of both of those.
Point of order, just or understanding here. We're going out. Is this going out on YouTube live, or is it a delay situation? And are the mics live for that purpose?
It is going out live on the town's website, as we did before the pandemic. So when we were live streaming direct to the platform that compiled all town meetings. So yes, the mics are live for that purpose, as well as connected into the speakers in here. So if you can make sure to speak into your mics, both so that it's picked up on the live stream and so that members of the audience who are here tonight can be sure to hear you, because the acoustics in this room aren't always the best.
Part of my reason for asking is I can hear you very clearly, not just because I'm this close, but because you seem to be coming across through some speaker situation here. I'm not sure what it is. And when Bob was just speaking now, it was as though maybe your mic wasn't picking up. I'm not sure, but that's and maybe it's the same for me. I don't know, but because I can't hear.
You do need to do the bended elbow. You have to make sure if you bend your elbow, you can reach your speaker.
Okay, just.
Is
to
it
try-
clear enough for members of the public?
I am going to go in there on the computer and
Okay.
listen for a bit. How's that? And then we'll know.
Thank you.
That consists of probably the only public input we'll have tonight. Thank you. Okay. I'm going off my own notes for topics of discussion. Not in any specific order. Any comments, discussion, findings of fact on the vegetative buffer?
No, I think it's quite clear, and I think they've done a good job in the plan.
Al? I'll try to sit over here.
I'd like some clarification from you, Bob, or from somebody relative to the requirements of the vegetative buffer. Certainly there's buffer in certain areas. There's not buffer all the way through. Most notable, there's no buffer obviously where the driveway is, but I bring that up only because there are some people that have expressed concern that because of that break, lights from the cars going both ways will disturb the residences across the street. So I guess I'd like to understand the requirements for the buffer first, and is there provision for the buffer to have breaks in it?
You have one?
Breaks in it.
Still not picking up the word. I'm sorry, Alice.
Breaks, B-R-E-A-K-S.
Cars braking. No. Oh, okay. I'm missing.
Yeah.
There's a buffer here.
Yep.
There's a hole in the buffer.
Talking about that is the break.
Yes.
Break in the
Yeah.
buffer line. Okay.
I gotta find it here in the regulation.
I can read it if you like.
Go ahead. Thank
So,
you. And just give, if you wouldn't mind giving the
major
the
site
reference.
plan landscaping requirements are section K1 of the site plan regulations. That's on page 46. It begins with a purpose statement that I'm not going to read. And then under, so then it proceeds to K1 parens 1 is purpose, K1 parens 2 is general requirements, and K1 parens 3 is required improvements that I believe is focused in on the buffer that you're referencing. So paragraph A, a landscaped area serving as a buffer zone shall be required wherever a commercial or industrial development abuts an adjacent residential property. Every development shall include landscaping to enhance the appearance of structures, to screen parking, loading, storage areas, and waste disposal facilities, to improve the visual character of the immediate area. Every site developed along routes 4, 43, 202, 202A, 9, and 107 shall plant street trees along the frontage of roads at intervals not to exceed 40 feet. The tree shall be a minimum of 3-inch caliper at a point 6 inches above the top of the root ball and shall be of a suitable hardwood species. Preservation of existing street trees shall be encouraged, and existing trees should be substituted for new plantings wherever possible. No pavement shall be placed along the drip line of existing trees in order to protect the trees. Protective barriers shall be installed around each plant and or group of plants that are to remain on site. For trees on the edge of construction areas, no more than 25% of the area within the drip line shall be disturbed. Paragraph D, landscaping around buildings shall be provided to buffer parking areas, define entrances, provide foundation, planting, and to soften large expanses of walls or long roof lines.
James, you need to turn into your mic. Sorry.
K1-4, paragraph A speaks specifically to buffer zone requirements. A buffer zone shall consist of a strip of land at least 20 feet wide, densely planted, parens, or having equivalent natural growth, and parens, with shrubs or trees at least 4 feet in height at the time of planting, of a type that will form a year-round dense screen at least 6 feet high within 3 years, semicolon, or a wall, barrier, or fence of uniform appearance 6 feet high and extending to within 6 inches of ground level. Paragraph B, for all landscaped areas, shade trees shall be planted at intervals of no more than 40 feet apart, and shrubs, perennials, and ground covers shall be planted en masse among the trees. Combination of evergreen and deciduous plantings are encouraged. A wall, barrier, or fence of uniform appearance 6 feet high and extending to within 6 inches of ground level may be used in conjunction with plant materials. All buffer areas are to be maintained as an integral part of the landscape. C, screening of unsightly features. Provisions shall be made to screen unsightly features, for example, refuse material storage, loading areas, waste disposal areas, etc. By blocking or minimizing the view of such features, berms and fences may be acceptable in conjunction with landscape elements. Section K1-5 then speaks specifically to landscaping for parking areas. Would you like me to keep going? Okay.
Definition of breaks.
I didn't hear anything about breaks.
Didn't hear anything about what I'm having trouble picking up.
It allowing breaks.
So essentially, your interpretation
Right.
of the vegetative buffer between a commercial property and a residential property is that the vegetative buffer surrounds the entire commercial property.
Well, at least for the abutters.
And
Is that including people across the street?
there are butters.
They're abutters. That's the question I asked last meeting.
Right.
I mean, I understand that you need to get in and out of the property, but for example, if we had the entrance on Route 4, I wouldn't be asking this question. So I'm asking it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I have a concern, because if you allow breaks, then what's to say the next applicant will say, well, I'm going to plant a tree, then I'm going to have a 40-foot break, then I'm going to plant a tree, then I'm going to have a 40-foot break, then I'm going to plant a tree, and so on, and essentially have no buffer. And I bring this up because I'm 175 feet from my neighbor. When I turn into my driveway, I get complaints that if I don't shut off my lights, I disturb their house.
Well, in that case, in that specific case for you, that is residential versus residential.
Right.
So you're making that assumption.
No, I'm just saying that it's obvious that without a buffer, it can cause a problem.
Okay. To be honest, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
But that's why we're here.
Well, okay, I'd like to respond to that in part. First of all, in the residential situation Hal's referring to as an example of something, obviously that happens frequently, not most of the time, in any residential area. People turning into a driveway or out, lights very often, or coming to the end of a road. I mean, I can think of any subdivisions in town. Your lights are pointing out onto somebody's house. I think of an individual I know well who lives along a road which I drive, and as silly as it might be, I actually, even though high beams are called for where I'm driving, I go to low beams. It's a little courtesy in the back of my mind that maybe, and he probably doesn't have a clue that I've done this or care, because there's many other cars that go by with no regard. Now he could grow or bushes, and he could put fences and so forth, but he's decided to live with whatever that is. And all I'm using that as an example of is that goes on all around town. You live next to somebody. Now that's not the same as a commercial where there's a lot more traffic, obviously, and there's a more concentrated situation.
Well, and that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, and that applies to not this time of year, but but it would apply in the wintertime, where you have late sunrise and early sunset. So I mean, that's where that's going to come up, because that's where headlights are going to be used. I'm wondering if that's to be the standard of consideration, then there's going to be, it seems to be, a number of situations where headlights are going to preclude operating a driveway in some given location. That's a thought. I think there's a point to what you're saying. There is, by the way, a garage directly across from this driveway. It's not the house itself. I don't think the garage will be disturbed, but it's, you're turning left or right, but particularly if you were turning left out of that Aroma Joe's driveway, you would sweep across where the house is. So I mean, there's a factor there. I'm just not clear if that's a sufficient reason to be greatly concerned. I'm considering this as I'm talking about it, but I'm thinking of situations that I already know of. And the residential one is one that you can't get around. It's what it is. And neighbors either kind of cooperate a little bit, but you can't turn off your lights in the middle of the night or something and then run over the cat. So
Well, Joe, just so you know where I'm coming from, and maybe the other members of the board, it also has to do with then the provisions about light, where it says no light source shall be permitted to cause glare, et cetera, et cetera. So it's sort of, I'm considering that sort of in conjunction with that, and that's why I raised the concern. And,
How are you quoting it? So no light source?
well, there's a lighting section also.
Right.
Yeah.
And so part of the reason I bring up the buffer question into whether it needs to be continuous has to do with whether or not light sources include the customers who are going in and out.
I think we discussed that way back and determined that it was not the case, that the light source of the customer was not considered part of the site plan. That the lighting regulations in the code refer to static, whatever you want to, as part building lighting, not necessarily vehicular lighting.
Permanently install
But-
lighting on the site, yeah.
But nonetheless, during this thing, we did discuss the lights, and we discussed them quite a bit. So I think it is a factor. I'm not saying this is the overriding concern I've got, but you said you wanted to list out the things, so I'm listing out the issues. So I guess one of the things is I see nothing in the regulations that talk about breaks in the buffer. And I guess if you want to skip to lights, I see nothing in the regulations that specify it's lights only from the buildings.
Well, it puts it into as Bob just expressed, I think, it puts it into a slightly odd category because we are concerned with the built, the installed lighting on a site, and that's all we can have some control over. But as you're saying, I mean, this is an incidental lighting that will occur because after dark. So it has it has an aspect to it.
Maybe we should just get all the points on the table first, Bob,
Sure.
rather than deliberate. Just my suggestion.
Well, we can bring it up with topic areas and then come back to the ones that are either unresolved or that we want to discuss further.
Well, could I just say, so he's brought up a point. Was there anybody else that wanted to deliberate? I don't. I'm just kind of curious. I mean, did you want to have a say on that issue? No? We heard him and heard his concern, and I'm ready. Next one.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, if you could bring the mic a little closer and speak.
I'm probably guilty too, sorry.
The only person that's not being picked up is Mr. Strobel. Well, I can hear
Okay.
you, but it's
Sorry.
lower than everybody. So if you could speak up a little
I can
and
do
bring
that.
the mic closer, it'd be great.
It was brought to my attention earlier. Okay. I'm going to make some notes here. Okay. We talked about the sidewalk. Any unresolved questions about the sidewalk? Findings of fact. It's been redesigned twice. We denied the initial waiver request. It was redesigned after that. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. I guess I'm concerned about it. I'm concerned regarding liability because the liability is going to fall on the town. And that's,
As far as the maintenance goes?
yes.
Are we talking the sidewalk along the turnpike or the sidewalk going into the property?
or both?
I'm talking about both.
Well, it's
My
the-
understanding is that the town has a memorandum of understanding with the DOT, and if there's an issue, we're responsible. If we insist on sidewalks, then, and there's some kind of an issue, this has gone all the way to the Supreme Court of New Hampshire, then the fact of the matter is the town, in my understanding, the town then is liable.
That's my understanding as well, as far as the memo of understanding with the DOT. But this is also not the only part of town where we have the memo of understanding with DOT.
And totally agree with that. I believe, and you can go back and look at the record, that the select board has clearly stated that they're not going to clear sidewalks, and they don't. So consequently, the only exception that I know of in that, to be honest with you, I think there's a couple of exceptions. One is town hall, and the other is the library. They do seem to clean those sidewalks.
Well,
So I'm talking about ones along road. It's my understanding that if you look, they're not even looking for a waiver anymore. They're going to put the sidewalks in, but it's still a concern of mine because of liability. And I look at that from, some of you know that my background was as a store manager. And I can't tell you how many times in 40 years of doing that where there was a slip outside on the sidewalk, and every single time, bar none, the store was responsible for the issue. And I think that is kind of what's here. Now, I certainly hope, as I'm sure everybody else does, that we never have an accident and no one ever gets hurt on any part of in Northwood. But accidents do happen, so that's my concern. So.
well, we're leading out we got a sidewalk that's going contiguous with and part of Co-Brown. It's also, and
I do
in
understand
part,
that.
I guess there was, maybe,
I do. I just wanted everybody, that's why I asked Linda to put out that information that she did for us, for you all. My concern is liability. And I am about as sure as I can get that if the sidewalks that are there, if somebody's hurt on that sidewalk and we haven't maintained them reasonably, and we do not, I think we're responsible. That's my understanding of it.
Okay, I'm sorry, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so Tim, let's just, I'm not sure where you're driving at. Are you asking that we reconsider the requirement for the sidewalk? Or are you saying
He's not asking for a waiver now, and I think it's way too late. I'm sorry that in this one instance, and I have gone through all 129 pages of that Linda sent us of the minutes and everything. So this is the only instance that I wished I had been on the board when that discussion had originally came up before the waiver was denied. I would have been tickled to death personally. I would have voted to give him the waiver. It's too late for that. But I'm just bringing this to your attention. So I wasn't on the board when that discussion originally took place. And all I would like to have done is, what I've done now is ask Linda to give you some more information so that what I think a different or better decision could have been made. We're beyond that. But I'm just bringing this out because it is a concern of mine, and we're here to talk about concerns.
Okay.
so you're not asking us to reconsider that?
I don't know that we could.
At this point, no.
I wouldn't think so. Yeah.
One of the options for us tonight is to, that could be let me look. One of the options, explicitly request a redesign of all non-compliant items. If the board feels that and this is from the town planner's comments. If the board feels that the application as a whole is approvable, but that specific items of compliance are outstanding and should be addressed prior to rendering a decision of approval, which should identify all remaining items necessary for compliance, including but not limited to Section 9Q sidewalks.
Just only because I'm catching it, Bob, but not entirely the last word I heard, sidewalk.
Yes.
So what's
So the option would be if
conditions of approval, yeah.
conditions of approval could be that we, as an option, we're not even close to that point yet, would be to request a redesign of non-compliant items, which could include the sidewalk. I'm trying to think of how to...
Not being done? Is that the
Yes,
reference, or
essentially.
in essence, or there is a
How we, that's a real sticky...
there's a sidewalk coming out of the Catholic Church
Correct.
property.
Aren't they in
it-
fact compliant?
What?
Isn't the sidewalk, their highway
Yes,
plan is compliant?
Yes,
So it
it
would
is
not be a
compliant.
non-compliant.
right.
So, I mean, they are in compliant. And I'm sorry to bring
opinion.
this up. I know
Yeah.
I'm confusing the issue. I think it's way too late, but I am very concerned. I mean, the best answer is, let's make everybody do sidewalks, and please, selectmen, would you take care of them? I don't see that happening in the near future, because it's expensive.
Okay.
I mean, the bottom line is, taking care of sidewalks is expensive. But it would be lovely to have a sidewalk on one side or the other, all the way from the school down to Route 202.
A rather major undertaking, which
Yes,
the
it
town
is.
has avoided in every which
And we
way
can't
for
ask this
for a number of
applicant to
reasons.
do all of that.
But there, in this case, though, we're dealing with on either, we have Co-Brown with some sidewalks, we got the Catholic Church or the property, the
Yep.
Catholic Church property. And it terminates there before it quite no, does it terminate before it gets to the corner? Anyway, so it comes out of the property and goes along there. So there's already that existing situation. Whether or not anybody shovels or plows it now, I have no idea. I don't know. Co-Brown, I guess, takes care of their stuff. I don't patrol that at all, and it's very likely they do. But that sidewalk that leaves Co-Brown then travels along in front of a telephone or whatever it is, company facility, and then a private property and so forth. However it's taken care of along there, I have no idea. But the town doesn't do it. I don't know that, I agree that there's some potential liability in any situation, but I don't know that this is the point to get, and we're out of, as Bob's pointed out,
Right.
we're past the point of doing anything about that particular item.
Maintenance of sidewalks is not part of our land use development or regulations.
Yeah. I guess just to clarify though on that, the reason that we added the sidewalks or asked for the sidewalks was with the understanding that, or with the, I shouldn't say understanding, a maybe presumption that one business follows another and that people had talked, I mean, it's in our master plan and everything, a
Right.
walkable neighborhood. And so we said, if you don't ask people to start doing that from the start, you have no chance to do that in the future. Or it's very difficult to do that in the future. And this was part of what we talked about and why we said we wanted to do that.
It's true, Hal, but we have this double, what is it? It's a conflicting
Yeah.
It's a catch-22. We've got a situation where there's quite a few private residences along the turnpike. They are not going to now construct sidewalks, I'll just speak for most of them, not going to construct sidewalks along their properties. And as you just said, on a few occasional commercial ventures, we can have that as an input. Even if we do, most of the road, if you just consider what's along the road, the turnpike, is never going to have sidewalks because they're never going to be contiguous. They're never going to be connected. There's too many private residences and existing commercial that it's after the fact, and that's not going to happen there, maybe some date future, but we get into this little thing where we're worried about the sidewalks, and we have an odd situation where I don't know how we make any sense out of that. There is a certain, in the case of Co-Brown, to take that as maybe the best example, you have a large population of students, especially, obviously, which have to get around. They're constantly between classes and so forth, moving by foot, and there's a good reason to have a good sidewalk network, and the school already understands that and does that, and they extend it a little beyond their perimeter, I guess. But outside of that, I don't see where we accomplish a lot with sidewalks. I'm sorry, it's kind of, as I say, a catch-22. We think they're a good idea, but you can't make any sense out of them. And so I don't know that we should spend, and since it's a fait accompli anyway, unless we alter it, apparently there's a little possibility at the very end, should this go forth, there's a possibility of making a little correction, if I understand what Bob said.
Okay, let me restate some of this. We have a concern over maintenance, which I think is shared, but maintenance, as I stated, is not part of our development ordinance. We can't hold this applicant to required to maintain at least I don't believe we can, to maintain a public sidewalk along a public road. You know, they might choose to do so, but we don't have it in our ordinance saying that there will be a maintenance plan for sidewalks on the property.
Can I say two things?
Hang on.
All right, sorry.
As far as the ordinance goes, are there remaining questions as to whether they meet the ordinance or not with the sidewalk plan? Anyone feel that they do not?
No, not at all.
Well, thank you. I saw two head shakes.
What are you saying?
Else?
What's the question?
The question is, does the latest plan submitted by the applicant meet the requirements, the ordinance requirements for the sidewalks? In the board, in each member's opinion. Anyone feel it does not? Okay. Okay. I will list. Go ahead, Tim. You had two questions, comments.
And their comments, and that's the last thing I'm going to say about it. So this whole issue came up with the dollar store, and that's why the waiver was granted at the dollar store. A lot of you weren't involved in that. It was a long, drawn-out, blah, blah, blah. If, for instance, as I have, you owned a business in Concord or a business in Rochester, and you didn't clean up the sidewalks, they have an ordinance. You have to, and they would come by and give you a warning, and the next time a ticket. No, we don't have that yet, so, you know, it's nice, and I'm sure that some of our businesses do. I know Co-Brown does, and I'm sure some don't. It's just a concern of mine, and I've expressed it ad nauseum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a selectman here, and he can bring it up at his own meetings.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Moving on to another topic, traffic. Now, I would like to break this down into two specific turning movements, case for topics. First of all, the westbound traffic on Route 4 turning right onto Bow Lake Road and presumably into the proposed Aroma Joe's. Start with that, just to keep it into data silos.
So off Route 4 into.
Coming from Portsmouth, Nottingham, Lee, to heading toward Concord, turning right onto Bow Lake Road. Where the applicant has proposed a right turn lane in the breakdown lane. We do have a finding from my understanding of in the public record from the DOT that current traffic levels do not require a right turn lane, but the applicant has proposed one anyway. to mitigate that. Any
So, and
discussion?
What
or-
does that mean? So the DOT says it's not needed, but don't they have to give approval for it? So if, let's say this application succeeded, would they not then have to go to DOT and say that we want to do this, and we're willing to give up land, and we're willing to pay for it? Doesn't have to be approved through the DOT? Or
Well, it's been designed by the DOT
So
and
there's
the
a design
applicant
approval? Okay. Okay.
They have, the applicant has already gone back to the DOT to say, yes, we would like, paraphrasing and judge the words on the intent, not the actual words.
So-
Because I don't have the quotes. It was that the applicant went back to DOT saying, essentially, we would like to resolve this issue by donating 10-foot right-of-way and adding a turn lane.
So, all I have to say about that is, that's nice. But frankly, it's not going to make a whale of a difference to the intersection in my mind, because I sat out there for half an hour Monday. Every single solitary person that turned right used the breakdown lane as a turning lane. Anyway. So, I would be very happy to have it. I'm not saying I'm not. I'm just saying that it's not, to me, a great big consideration in the change of the traffic of that intersection, because that particular part of it, because as we speak, everybody is using it as a turning lane now, illegally.
Unless somebody's broken down and the...
Can't hear.
Well,
Yep.
I have not seen anybody broken down, but I suppose that could happen.
Betty said that this, essentially the breakdown lane, if somebody broke down in the breakdown lane, they would not be able to turn right.
Right.
Is that a fair statement?
If somebody broke down in a turning lane, they still would be able to use the turning lane. So, I don't want to argue.
I'm not
giving
trying to
you my
argue.
point.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, an observation, the applicant was willing to do this.
I personally had actually
Measured both the middle turn lane and the existing shoulder. There was a 1-inch difference. That is the official turn lane prescribed by DOT, and the actual shoulder area that's being used, as Tim pointed out. Most everybody does do that, uses it to some degree, but my observation is not always, but yeah, to a great extent. But there was only a 1-inch difference. The problem, though, was, from my perspective, was that there was still a curb there. And I like the change in terms of making it a more accessible turn. There's another part to that, and that's the radius change on that curve. I think I referred to the fact before. I've driven a school bus through there, and a long bus cannot, of course this is true of any intersection, a long bus cannot make a hard turn off this. If there's 2 lanes for turning, the right-hand lane cannot be used by a school bus because they cannot negotiate the turn. There's never enough radius. Same thing as a tractor trailer has. They have to go out to the center and then come in on the turn. That's true of school buses, and there's a number of them in the morning, both long and short school buses. So, but what I know is that presents a problem, and when the radius is softened, when it's broadened, a longer radius, however you want to refer to it, it makes it easier for longer vehicles, both trucks and school buses. So that to me is a positive change, and I would almost say a necessary one to make it a functioning corner in regard to what's being proposed. Now that obviously has been proposed by the applicant, but without it, I would see that as a real bugaboo. So.
Okay. Other discussion on the right turn lane as far as findings of facts go?
I'd like somebody to review what data was given to us to confirm that the associated driveway being so close to that turn is not a hazard. You come around the right corner.
That the driveway into the house?
Yes.
That's been negated.
Closed.
That's been closed.
completely.
completely.
Got it.
There is no driveway into the house. The access to the house is off the driveway to the site. Okay. Other discussion on the right turn?
What is the discussion specific? Give me a clue again, Eric.
Well, just, if you have questions, comments, findings of fact, whatever, on the right turn lane.
On
I'm
that
just trying
right
to
turn
group
lane.
things together so that we make sure we cover the aspects that we want to cover and not scattershot all
The
over.
other observation I would make, and again, this is just from my own personal experience, but both driving a vehicle and a regular vehicle, a truck, pickup, car, and a school bus, is that when you get any kind of congestion coming up to something like that. Now, obviously, I just said a long school bus has to go out. They're obviously becoming an impediment for a moment till they make that turn. That slows things up to a degree. So that's being mitigated, it seems to me. But there is the fact that a real turn lane there does make it, I think, more accessible going through, not going on to Bow Lake Road, but just simply going towards Cobra as you go through, negotiate that intersection. And by that I mean that traffic in this critical morning period that we're talking about is about a 7 to 8:30, if I remember. It's roughly about an hour and a half, where it's the real heavy traffic that's been measured and we have all this data on. And that's where this question of congestion and slowing everybody up. But what I find is right now, there's no coffee shop there, but when you're going through there, the traffic is backing up naturally from Coburn for a variety of reasons. It's being slowed down partly just because of the volume. It's slowed down because there's a traffic guard out there stopping traffic dead, or at least slowing it down, and there's a turning process going on at Coburn. So that backup goes right back to that intersection at the busy times. And it's an odd situation where you're headed west at that intersection, heading towards Coburn, and you're having to sometimes even stop at that intersection or shortly before or after because of the natural flow. As I referred to before, the one thing that is odd about this is there's no speeding traffic at that time of morning because you can't. There's just too much going on. What there really is the problem, and I've wrestled with this in my own mind and just trying to understand and listening to others, both the people coming down Bow Lake Road, and we haven't heard from anybody that I know of that's going to work on Route 4, but there is the fact that you are going to be slowed down one way or the other. It happens right now, and the question for us is that how much more is it going to be were this installation to take place? But you're not facing a situation as you are in other times of the day, because I come onto that road at many different locations, whether I'm coming out of the Narrows, whether I'm coming out of my own road that I live on. You've got people moving at a minimum 45 miles an hour, tractor trailer or cars, and that presents its own dicey situation. I'm just saying that in that morning, there is not that, I'm not saying it never occurred, but summertime now is, there's going to be a lot less traffic because the schools and summer vacation. So that will change the dynamic. But talking about the school year, the traffic is already naturally slowed down. So I don't think speed is so much the issue, it's the congestion that, to me, presents the question. That's just
Okay.
regarding that.
I'm looking at the original traffic report, page 18, for Bow Lake Road to right-hand turn departures. The 2019 existing is a level of service C as in Charlie. For 2020, with the build versus no build, they're both level of service C, so there's essentially very minimal.
Coming down Bow Lake and turning
Coming
west.
down, exactly, exiting the applicant's property, or coming down Bow Lake Road, turning right, heading west toward Concord. There's essentially minimal change. There's no level of service change.
No, but there is no question there's additional traffic. It just
Yes.
fell within the parameters. I know what you're saying. It fell within the parameters. There's no doubt additional traffic, and we saw that in,
The average delay for 2020 for no build is 20.3 seconds. The average predicted or designed delay for right turn traffic for 2020 with the build condition is 21.2. So you're talking a 0.9 second increased delay for right turn traffic
on average. Now,
on
the
average,
individual-
according to the
and-
design. For 2030, you're looking at a 1.6 second increased delay by design for right turning traffic out of the site. Moving from, and it just is the data silos or grade level silos, if you want to call it that way. For 2030, the no build is level of service C, and the 2030 build condition is level of service D because the cutoff is at 25 seconds. They're on one side or the other. The difference between the two is 1.6 seconds. How?
Okay, I got confused
Sure.
as to which right turn you were talking about.
My understanding of it is if you're coming down Bow Lake Road, headed toward Route 4, and you want to turn right, heading west toward Concord, going past Co-Brown from Bow Lake Road.
There was a lot of discussion about the DOT and the turn lane that was associated with that particular lane as opposed to the lane on Route 4 for right turn into the property?
Correct. This is opposite the property. This is if you are turning out of, yes, right turn departures.
Okay. So, Joe, what were you talking about with the bus?
Well,
That was turning in.
the reference,
Well, that's where I'm getting confused.
they're coming Route 4, buses do come down Bow Lake Road, because some of them that go up there have to come back. But there's but if you're on Route 4, the majority of buses that I'm aware of are headed either to the school itself or beyond the school, because a number of them go all the way to Concord, I know of. And so they're coming down, going west. There's a certain number of them that are going to go into Co-Brown. But before they get there, there's certain they're going to go up Bow Lake Road, because there's a number of pickups back that way, Sherburne, Bow Lake Road, and so forth. And they're going back there and to pick up whoever. And then in all cases, as far as I know, they're going to come back out. But to make that turn, a long bus, that's what you mean? A long bus needs a much bigger radius. It cannot make a tight turn on a corner, just impossible. You want to drive over the corner. You watch tractor trailers do this all the time when they miss their corner. And, so that's the same thing with a long bus. So the shorter buses, they're a little more flexible. My only point was that the mitigation of this corner, softening the corner, making it a broader radius, is going to make it easier for everybody, but the buses and any trucks particularly. It'll make it better to make that turn. Now they're going to be, and the long bus the way the long bus works is it still will not be in the turn lane. It's just the way a tractor trailer, it cannot do that. It's the way life is. You have to be out and then turn.
So your comments were related to the right-hand turn going from Route 4 in.
Correct.
Tim, which were your comments then?
So far as I know, I've only commented on turning off of Route 4 onto Bow Lake from the Portsmouth end.
Yeah, Bob had shifted over to
I shifted over to, because we were talking about going back out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Probably my mistake.
Yeah, my only concern there is, in the rush hour on the right turn that you're talking about there, plus the other one is the conflict with pedestrians.
Okay. I want to get to the left turn lane out from departing Bow Lake Road, trying to go east toward Lee, towards Portsmouth, Nottingham. We've had a lot of discussion, and it's been a very big concern for me. The applicant has increased the turn lanes, the length of the turn lanes and the width of the turn lanes, to accommodate as much the designed queue traffic, which is up to, according to this, 9 vehicles. According to for the 2030 build stage, 2030 build, there's not a queue of 9 vehicles, potentially. So,
But the new extension will accommodate 9, that's what you're
the new extension will accommodate 9. Okay. The problem, as I see it, is that by multiple models, because both the original traffic design and the rebuttal by Mr. Bernauer, the revised one, is that we're still looking at delays of on average 46 seconds for existing pre-built over the morning peak hour. And we're also looking at, as Mr. Parna talked about the other night, the difference between the build and no build difference, the queue, the delay for a one-stage turn for 2020 between no build and build is almost not pull out my calculator. Might as well use technology while I have it here. "90 seconds, not quite 92 seconds.
That's
Now-
the increase or the total?
That is the increase.
So it goes up
So
by...
we're going up by 90 seconds. Now, that being said, that is the original model, which, as Mr. Perna stated, when the volume of traffic gets close to not 1, the models don't fit reality very well. That is the case in that number, which is why we have the revised number.
And that's where he did his own study.
Right.
To look at it as compared to the
Right.
model versus actual.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think the first model predicted a
First-
3x increase in the wait time, and the second model, a 2x increase in the wait time.
The second model fit a little bit better, but we're still looking at
Well,
a significant increase.
All
The
we
way
know
I
is it fit the lower end of the data. We don't know really that it fit better at the upper end or not. They're all models.
They're all, yes, exactly.
so-
They're all models.
It's a minimum of 2, if not 3, and if he's wrong, 4.
What are you
I
saying,
don't-
2, 3, 4? I'm missing the connection. on
The wait time.
Oh, minutes?
No, it's, right now, listening to the folks that gave testimony, everybody said it's a terrible intersection. The wait times are horrendous. Mr. Pernoff's first model said the wait times will now get 3 times worse. His revised model said it'll get 2 times worse.
Okay, I didn't...
And what he
yeah.
said was they're models.
Well, in part, except that he did an actual count study over 3 days, I believe it was. But and then and it was at a busy time. He took the study. I mean, we are talking about a concentrated period of time, and that's important from 7 to about 8:30, if I remember. I may have that little off.
7 to 8.
It's about 90 minutes, isn't it?
7 to 8 is the peak hours.
7 to 8?
7 a.m. to 8 a.m. is the peak
Okay.
morning hour.
Yeah. Because the school is, everybody has to be there, and then and there's a slack off of all that activity. And it turns out the major activity is the students mostly, because the teachers have their own parking area. The student, maybe some park in the back, but the students are, if you look at the numbers, the student numbers coming in through that intersection are very heavy, especially at that time. I mean, that's the bugaboo here is that we are talking about a concentrated time. We look at other times of the day, this is a very modest kind of situation. I mean, first of all, there's not much traffic coming down Bow Lake. There is still a fair amount of traffic out on the highway on Route 4, but it doesn't bear on anything anymore in terms of these numbers. So we are looking at this very concentrated period, and it's not to be dismissed. If I were coming to that intersection and I was going to sit there, I thought, for 15 minutes, I would change my schedule, but I would be ballistic. I think I referred to this before. I don't like sitting much when I'm used to not sitting. Now, people that come to that intersection at that time of the morning know what's at stake. What I saw was in the numbers, and Bob, you can correct me or somebody can, there were some wait times within that window that have concentrated traffic that were as much as a minute and a half. Minute 40 is what I seem to remember, but whatever. And that was the maximum ones that were counted. Some of them were 5 seconds. Some of them were 15 seconds. And this is the randomness of traffic that has to do with, as everybody knows, you come to the intersection, there's only one guy ahead of you, and things are going to move along. Or the bus is making the turn. I mean, this is not a joke. The bus is making the turn I referred to, and now you got a big wide window for 10 cars to go sweeping out into because the bus is going to take a few minutes, and everybody knows that. Not a few minutes, but half a minute, whatever. And they're all going to sweep out there. So you get these idiosyncrasies. But the average, when we start talking average, everybody isn't waiting that time. Some are waiting maybe close to 2 minutes or minute and a half. I saw on a couple of instances. Most of them are less, and some of them are as short as, like I say, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So we're in this, his judgment, the Purnow's judgment, as I understand it, was these fell into if everybody was waiting a minute and a half, this would be an impossible intersection. But it's not that, now or in the future. But it's going to be, some people are on average going to be waiting longer. And I accept that. The question becomes, is it out of the bounds of normal expectations when you travel anywhere? You're on Route 125, trying to go through Epping or something. There's 1,000 cars moving out of all those little businesses, and do you expect to be slowed up? Sure you do. And do you gripe about it? Well, you're pretty silly if you do, because that's the way it is. I'm only saying, and it's true, we are adding a situation here, or potentially adding a situation that would cause some slowing. The question for me is it out of bounds? Out of reasonableness for somebody arriving? If everybody had to wait longer, I would think that would be unacceptable, but that's not what the study shows. There are people waiting as little as 5 seconds, 10 seconds. It's just the happenstance of the moment you get there. I think this turn lane helps out that. Because you get a queue up to 9 cars. They're the ones that can just turn. It's the ones in the other lane that have to. The reason they're in that lane, I take it, is because they're going to go towards Dover. So, or somewhere down the way.
Well, Joe, just to interrupt one second.
Well,
Mr. Purnow said none of the improvements change the traffic study results. The last traffic study includes all the changes, and he encouraged us to go by the averages. He said, yes, as you said, there's some that wait just a little bit, there's some that wait a long time. In some cases, some people wait 10 minutes.
No, I didn't see that anywhere.
Maybe that's one of the original ones then.
I didn't see
said-
10 minutes anywhere. If somebody can point that out.
Yes, I
I'm-
can point it
I'm-
out. It's
I'll revise
the-
what I just said.
Table 3S is the rebuttal or response from the 1/22/20 memo from Mr. Purnell, Table 3S. And I'm looking at the functions.
Are you quoting somebody or the report? Go ahead.
I'm quoting from the revised study, the revised Table 3S, the design standards for Bow Lake Road left turn departures. The existing 2019 counted average delay for that hour is 46 seconds. For the 2020 no build, the delay is 57.6. This is the revised model. For the 2020 build, you're looking at a delay of 104.4 seconds. For the 2030 no build, you're
There's
looking
another 40 seconds, okay.
that's, yes, 37 and a half seconds. Design difference between the build and no build for 2020. For 2030, it's, no, sorry, 38 seconds for 2030. It was, I gotta look at my numbers here.
We're all talking, and all of these numbers are the peak hour
Yes,
numbers.
it's 47 seconds for the difference between the build and no build. So you're moving from an existing delay of 46 seconds to an additional design of potentially 47 seconds on top of that 46.
On average.
Going into the future, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can sort of cut to the chase on my argument. After hearing Mr. Purnell the last time, I guess I got an appreciation for the idea that the ratings are not, as you get in school, A, B, C, D, E, F. The ratings are more like hurricanes, where you have categories 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so my position is, if you're already in a Category 5 hurricane, would you want to tell the weather, add some more wind? I personally wouldn't. So when I listen, and the other thing Mr. Purnell said was, these ratings and their acceptability is based on the local. He specifically said, if you go to New York and ask a cab driver to wait 50 seconds, he'd be as happy as a pig in, he'd be happy. We have heard testimony after testimony where people have said they're already fed up with this, meaning they're already at their limit. And so to add to that, based on the local criteria saying it's already bad, I have a real problem doubling it. So that's my read of it. I just cannot see taking a bad situation and making it worse by a factor of 2. And that's based on the testimony that we got from the people that live here. So I take that with a fairly high rating or fairly high quality.
Betty?
Okay, my question is if any of the information is actually valid, because there was one instance where he seemed to think that was what it was showing was too long a wait. So he said that he went there on one day and personally counted the cars.
Yeah.
And managed to come up with something that was much smaller.
Yes. I'll try to answer your question, at least the way I understand it. We have table, whatever it was, Appendix F in the original traffic report, where someone, Mr. Purnell's company, counted over from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. on September 10th, 2019, which is the morning peak hour, every car that was turning left out of Bow Lake Road, when they arrived, when they departed. And over that hour, the average wait from when they pulled into the intersection, or when they stopped, because they might have been the third car in line, to when they actually departed the intersection, the average was 45 seconds. In taking that same design scheme and you run it through a traffic model that says if you do this, these will be the predicted results. The highway capacity manual design was 106 seconds predicted delay for that same intersection based on the cars and every existing traffic volumes. So the point that this table was attempting to make is that the models that highway designers use don't always fit reality.
But by the
And-
same token, if I remember correctly, that was a day that school was not in session.
I don't believe that was the case because I think we specifically asked to have the traffic count done on a day that traffic or the school was in session. And looking at the delays, it makes a lot of sense that the school was in session at that point in time. Does that help explain the your validity question? Or answer you?
I'm still not really comfortable with it, no.
Okay. Okay. Tim?
Well,
Okay.
hold on, okay, sorry.
Wait till Tim.
So without question, I've read all of the information, I've listened to an awful lot, and there might be a little concern here or a little concern there on some of the other issues, but the traffic that is currently in this intersection and then increasing that traffic is my concern. We have the second busiest east-west highway going through our town, whether we like it or not. And frankly, when I bought my property 25 years ago, it didn't matter to me. And there was a time when it really did. And because I owned a store in Concord, and I literally changed my store hours because I didn't want to go through that area at certain times of the day. It was just misery. We do have, not only do we have the highway going through our town, we have Co-Brown right on the highway. I wish they wouldn't build schools on the highway personally, but I wasn't here in 1492 when they built it.
Close.
We also have, adding to the Co-Brown, which we have all of our students go there, we have Stratford coming in on Sherburne Hill Road. Stratford students. I already explained to all of you that I spent a good amount of time working on that road and on Bow Lake Road. I was appalled. I honestly, at not only the amount of traffic, it just surprised me. This is a scenic byway at the time. And the traffic was incredible. And the speed was even worse. I mean, it was awful. And it hasn't changed. And then you add in a soccer game or practice coming down that hill. And yes, some people live west and a lot of people live east and they have to make that turn. So all of these things add up to me to be an already nightmare for some people. I've listened to all of the people who spoke. I've read all of the letters that have come into us and they tell a story that frankly I'm quite familiar with in this town, and that is that can be a very difficult interchange to go through at times. And I absolutely think that this business is going to add to that traffic nightmare, including the fact that, so when you have to wait some of those minutes, when you have to wait 90 minutes or whatever, 90 seconds, excuse me, or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, you start taking chances. Many of us do. But especially high school students. They're bomb-proof. They're bulletproof. You cannot kill them. They think. Unfortunately, that's not true. So, just the fact that we have an inordinate amount of high school students traversing through that interchange is also very important to me. So, there are the homeowners, and I do understand their plight, but I'm very concerned about our students and Stratford students who also go through that intersection many times. Thank you.
Okay.
And big trucks don't stop very well.
No, they don't.
No.
And just as an aside, it was just like a week and a half ago, we had another horrendous accident on Route 4. A young lady who works for the school in 2 capacities. I mean, she is really badly hurt. She's going to be in the hospital a long time. It's a very difficult highway that goes right through the middle of our town.
Joe, you had a comment earlier.
Yeah,
Or
but that didn't
requested a
happen
comment.
at that intersection, not that that would
No, it
prove...
didn't.
Not that that would prove something one way or the other. So far for the consideration that I've had to do on this, I found that the applicant, I've said this maybe before, but has made an extraordinary effort to mitigate all of the complaints or issues that have come against him. The traffic one is one that, as I think Tim, as Hal pointed out, is knotty, and I think maybe I said that too, but to me that is the most difficult aspect of this. The rest of this pales in my mind by comparison. So to what degree are we possibly, if were this approved, increasing, there's 2 categories perhaps, difficulties for people that are commuting in the morning in this critical 1.5 hour period, because the rest of the time it's really a moot point. And are we, and to what degree, and a more important one, see, I put myself in their place, no, I don't want to be slowed up. As much as, though I know I'm going to, if I come to that intersection at 7:30 in the morning, I better be prepared to have a little delay. And depending if the traffic cop has stopped the traffic up the road, is going to be a delay longer, and that may play into some of these numbers, by the way. The fact that the traffic comes, as I've said before, and it does, come to a complete stop on the highway, and so you've got that anybody in the queue on Bow Lake Road is going to be waiting even longer. The issue to me, and I go with Tim or Hal's consideration here of safety. I don't think safety is the key part of it. I think that the delays are the part that is troubled. Pretty much everybody that's talked against this, I know they bring up safety, but they're bringing up safety in a context in the morning where the traffic is moving at 5, 10, 15, 20 miles an hour. And sometimes totally stopped. So I'm hard-pressed to figure how I put this together. I'm not saying that an accident can't occur there. Of course it could. And at the point that a 17-year-old is not quite making all the calculations that he might make, or she, for whether they can dodge in front of somebody. Okay, but that doesn't change. That does not change because of what's on that corner. They're doing what they're doing. And I've heard, in fact, a number of parents or previous parents and people that were
testifying against this, because they had Co-Brown students, refer to the fact that there is this, as Tim referred to it, this willing to take chances, and it's just a characteristic of the way that is. I don't see that we're going to moderate that at all in this scenario. I mean, they're going to still do what they're going to do, and the greatest number of traffic participants here are the students. If you look at the numbers, I mean, all you have to do is break down how many are making the turn left or right, particularly, well, not particularly, but left or right. That is, you're on the turnpike, you're turning into Bow Lake Road at that time in the morning. The bulk of traffic, none goes to the Aroma Joe site now, there's nothing there. But the bulk of that traffic goes to Academy Way. You look at the numbers, they've got the count on them. That's exactly where they go. And it's a number like 80% or 90%. A few of them go up the road further. So those are students, I'm assuming, unless somebody's lost and just wandering around. The Aroma Joe's is going to add to the traffic. I think with the mitigation of that turn coming from Portsmouth, those are most of the people that probably will turn in there. And I suspect that for a couple of reasons, but we could go over this separately. Anyway, whatever. But that's what the count and the way it's projected, they're going to turn in. Coming, that is, from the Portsmouth area, Dover area, Rochester, where they're coming up the turnpike, they're going to turn there maybe to get coffee. The issue now becomes, okay, so they turn in and it's made safer and it's made double lane and the traffic is still creeping along there, because I do not say any way before the school bell rings and everybody's got to be in class where that in the morning changes. I've been through there at all kinds of times, and that's the magic time. But the traffic that's turned into the coffee shop has to come back out. And so that is the other part of the equation to me. It's going to be very slow-moving traffic. They have to get back in the queue. And because they were moving towards Concord in the first place, I'm assuming they're going to be over on that right-hand lane, the extended lane, trying to get back into Route 4. That to me is the scenario, and I've tried to parse that out in my mind. Others have. You've made your own judgments, I guess. But is that less safe? I don't think so, really. I do think it is slower. There's no question. We've got numbers from Purnow's traffic study by the national model, which is doesn't apply to us, as it turns out, really. He did a hard count. It still slows everybody up. There's no question. It adds to the traffic. 40-something cars, I think, is the number in the key hour. I may be off on that. I'm not sure. Somebody can correct me. But 40 new cars that have turned off, gone into the coffee shop, and tried to get back out. I just don't see that as an impossible situation. Later in the day, it's just a moot point. So to me, as I said before, I think this is very tight to make this decision right up to all the concerns taken into account. The traffic one is the most important. I'm first concerned about safety, and I'm second. I'm sympathetic to somebody slowed up. There's no question. I know what I would be feeling like if I were in that position. But that's not my right to, when the numbers are within, okay, I'm finished. When the numbers are within the allowable national framework that says that traffic can be allowed within reasonable parameters, and this is what they are, it's kind of a doable situation. Slower, yes.
I'd like to comment to that.
Go ahead, Hal.
First off, Joe, remember, these aren't, they're not saying these are within national standards.
No, they're saying they're slower.
They're just saying the standard is A, if it's this time, B, if it's this time, C, if it's this time. They're not saying if it's C, it's okay, and D, it's not. They're just saying C is not as good as, or D is not as good as C, and F is not as good as D.
They're not saying the time, they're saying the quantity of cars.
And the times. It's the whole
At
factor.
a time, okay.
But the other part I'd just like to just check, since you're making such a big part of your decision based on the traffic speed, I have to say that my recollection of his traffic speed numbers is different than yours.
What is it? Tell me, I don't know.
Well, I think he has it in his report. And I think when he was doing his studies, he did not see the slowdowns that you were talking about.
Well, not during the other times of the day, if that's what you mean, because I saw
I'm
that.
talking about when he was doing his, and I might have this wrong. The only reason I'm bringing it up for you
Okay.
is,
So, the automated traffic recorder summary from September 2009, while school is in session. This is page 5 of the original traffic report. For US Route 4, the daily traffic volume is 15,316 vehicles per day. The morning peak hour is 1,414 vehicles per hour. The afternoon peak hour is 1,310 vehicles per hour. The average speed, which is the 85th and the 85th percentile, the average speed overall is 44 miles per hour.
That's for the whole day, yeah.
during
It's an
the,
average for the day. That's
Yes,
not, it's not
that
telling
is-
you the speed
is
that we're on
during
talking
the day.
about. Pardon?
Yes, that is during the day.
so you're saying you
So,
think,
I'm only talking about an hour and a
on
half.
Bow Lake Road,
I'm not talking about the whole day.
on Bow Lake Road, where the speed limit is posted at 25, the average speed for the day is 33. The 85th percentile, which is just a statistical derivation saying 85% of vehicles travel less than 39 miles per hour. Academy Way, the the average daily traffic volume is, 448. The morning peak is 168. The afternoon peak is 63. The average speed is 18. Also of interest
On Academy Way, you're saying?
on Academy Way, just to give that. Okay.
My turn.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you. Please do that more often when you need to speak.
If that is the nature of the beast, you've already got all this traffic, all this mass quantities of, pardon the,
don't say it,
pain
Betty.
in the ass stuff. Why would you add to it exponentially? Which,
That's the
no
question.
matter what the traffic study shows, it's going to do that. So why?
Well, that's why the applicant is here, and that's our job to determine as to whether the applicant has mitigated the traffic or not.
Were you thinking about a break?
I was thinking about a break.
Oh, you are so wonderful.
Yes. Before we break, it appears,
You can have the men's room. I'll
That-
get the girls' room.
yes, okay.
Just so everybody's aware, I am not going to shut off the video or the audio for that break. So please be aware of that because I don't want to not come back on.
We're in recess for 5
Embarrass
minutes.
yourself at your own risk. I just said embarrass yourself at your own risk.
Precisely.
Nicely said.
Oh, yeah.
Try to beat everyone.
Was that close?
Yep.
And I asked everybody around me.
Just me or everyone?
James was good. Joe, of course, was. But everybody else, no. And I'm sorry to be
No, that's
a pain in the neck about it.
we're here.
Like, I'm not eating any.
Budget season,
I'm-
I'm showing up saying, get decent mics.
I'm following my rule of, it's
The
within,
rule is too far away, honey.
Well-
Sorry.
it's okay. It's not loud enough or it's not clear enough.
It's not loud enough.
Okay.
Can you tap yours?
Yours is a
Do
little,
we think if we swap with this one, would it? Can you hear this one?
yes.
Can you hear this now? Is that better? Yeah, well, that's fine. Okay.
Well, James.
That's better.
Yes,
Okay.
it's not the.
He said,
It's not the arm length, it's 6 inches. Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
We haven't done this in a year and a half.
it comes across now.
We haven't done this in a year and a half.
I know, that's why I came right in.
Rusty.
Remember.
Yeah, actually, when you're closer, it picks up real well, and then it seems to have a very quick
Yeah.
attenuation, yeah. I should remember that, too.
My apologies.
Sit up, oh, that's good. Get that, sit up, or hold the mic with you. If I could
Okay.
mention that.
I will tell you, well, as chair tonight and former chair and lots of experience in running meetings, if you have an issue hearing us, that is a point of order. You can, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you that earlier, but that is something that you can say, we cannot hear you, you're welcome to interrupt.
Thank you.
The traffic study doesn't have,
Thank you very much.
I don't know what the speeds were on the main, when he was doing the study, what the,
I think we should take these motion up.
I thought for sure it did, and that's why I challenged him.
For sure, what?
I thought for sure
I had given
he
up
had data as to
reading
what
and
the
doodling in
three,
borders.
4 speeds were
I started
when
again.
he was doing the study itself.
But see, what Bob was quoting is an average half of a day.
Can you wait till we're back on?
Oh, sorry, yeah, he's right, we should
There's more
discuss
if
it.
we need it.
We're just, it's just point of information.
He's right,
Yeah, let's wait till we're back on the record.
he's right, yeah.
All right.
I'll take a look and see. Oh, was that the study there?
Oh, no, yeah, that's the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome to take a look at it. It's whatever. Let me see if I can isolate.
I could have swore we had
Possibly you're right.
more speed data associated with the study time. That could be completely wrong.
This is a kind of a summation.
Yeah, but that's what you were talking about, but it doesn't address the time period that you were talking about.
Page 4, Appendix B. But you're looking for speeds, right?
Well, you,
Yeah.
we don't, because
I didn't find it in there. Okay. It's been brought to my attention that the elbow length rule between the mic is too far. Is that better? Okay. So it's now 6 inches between the ball of your mic and your mouth. Sorry about that. Okay.
Bob just quoted that.
While they're perusing the original traffic report, My comments on left turn traffic, because it's been specific, or I have a definite concern for this, is that as Mr. Perna has documented in his existing traffic report, Bow Lake Road and Route 4 is already at level of service F, even before this application was built. The applicant has, let me look at my other, where is it here? Yes. So for left turning traffic, my apologies. Bow Lake Road left turning departures 2019 existing from traffic from table 3S, the level of service is E for a no build existing traffic situation. For 2020, no build moves to level service F, 2020 build level service F. For 2030, the same thing. You're moving from F to F. You're already at the lowest level of service. Yes, level of service is a data silo, just like between a letter grade, because I work at a school, letter grade D and a letter grade E can be 1 point. The point, though, is that it's already a very poor, and I think all of us have stated this in some degree, it's already a poor situation. And that goes toward the requirement that the applicant is required to mitigate safety. I think they've done all the mitigation they possibly can that the intersection will allow and have explored just about every possibility of doing so, but it still is not mitigated because it's a already bad situation. Okay. Related to traffic, slightly different topic, moving away from specific to left turning traffic, but just in general. We have a traffic report where we're adding, depending on whose numbers you believe, but they're still in the same range, 41 to 45 vehicles pulling into the shop, 90 to 93 trips as predicted, versus for a restaurant use versus 1 on Bow Lake Road for any other use of that same lot for general or residential. How is that not a change in the neighborhood?
Oh, so you're switching topics on us? Are we?
I'm switching
Similar,
topics
but
away from
different.
the left-hand turn back to general traffic. If that's okay, if you want to, are we done talking about the left-hand turn?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Are you?
I guess if you're talking about general traffic, maybe then I'll just bring up the other topic that we did not discuss, at least in my mind, and that is any pedestrians. That it's already a bad intersection.
Let's hold on that with traffic.
Okay.
Would you make your point again, please?
So my point is that, can I have my traffic study, Joe? In your hands?
Yes. Can you have it? You use it? Yep.
Yes. Where did you steal mine?
I didn't touch anything.
Oh, my apologies. Too much space. Lost it. I lost a bookmark. By my recollection, I have another one.
Another one here.
Yeah. That was a summary. The traffic design for this use of a restaurant was 90 to 93 trips per day additional. For a residential use or a general business. I'm trying to find the exact quote. I thought I highlighted it. The important fact for me is that traffic on Bow Lake Road moves from 241 to 320 vehicles per day in a 2020 no build to build design. So we're looking at an increase of 33% of traffic on Bow Lake Road if according to the design factors. That to me is a significant change in the neighborhood. In addition, well, the applicant has stated, and I can't disagree on that there is there's a good bit of commercial property in this area and what constitutes the neighborhood. Well, there's arguably Co-Brown, a traffic repair, Catholic church, the greenhouse, the what was Fairpoint Verizon, whatever the telephone exchange is. That's all on the public record. The difference that I see between those commercial properties and this commercial property is that the dwell time on traffic is significantly lower. If I go to the remodel shop across the street, if I go to Town Hall, I go to the car repair shop on the corner of Harmony and Route 4, I'm typically there for minutes to 15 minutes or more, depending on whether I'm at a planning board meeting where I'm here for 4 hours at Town Hall, or more. If I go to the remodel shop, I'm there in and out. I'm also not, in this case, the business model is built on turnover, and we're looking at a 33% increase in traffic on Bow Lake Road alone, and that is a significant difference between what exists now and what the design factors are, or design is considering or is predicting. And that then goes into zoning Roman 5B1A1, by its nature, design or through the use of vegetative or topographical buffers, the use will not substantially alter the character of the area in which is proposed to be sited. Just by bringing traffic in, that is changing the neighborhood. Hal?
So I think this, well, let me just say it this way. Certainly some of what you said is affected by what you define the neighborhood as.
Correct.
And we've heard alternating opinions as to what the neighborhood should be. And I'll just say that personally, based on my experience, for example, going to Nashua, New Hampshire, where you drive down Main Street, you have one look, feel. You turn off onto Pearl Street, which, yes, is a different, it's still some businesses, but by turning off onto Pearl Street, for example, there's an entirely different look and feel and is considered different neighborhood. You go further north, where we used to go for the bakery, it was off the side street off Main Street, even though it was in the same building as the building facing Main Street. That street had an entirely look and feel. Similarly, you go further down south on Main Street in Nashua, where there's still quite a bit of traffic, but you turn off into a neighborhood and it is noticeably different as soon as you make the turn. And I guess from my perspective, with the main entrance and exit of the building, the business being on Bow Street, that by definition makes Bow Street the neighborhood, not Route 4. Yes, there's frontage on Route 4, but in my opinion, the neighborhood goes from where you start turning in off of Route 4 back through Bow Street, and that's a residential neighborhood.
Bow Lake Road, you mean?
Bow Lake Road, sorry.
That's okay. Just
In
wanted to be clear.
addition, the assessor for the applicant said that as a result of this business coming in, the best and highest use of the Severance's property will be a business use. It's currently a resident, so if, as a result of this, the new best and highest use is a business, resident to business in my book is a change in neighborhood also. Do you follow what I'm saying? Yeah. So for both those reasons, I think we're changing the neighborhood if we do this.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
Well, in part, I could agree with what Hal said. It's not in there. There's a change in the neighborhood, in a manner of speaking. This is a property, though, that sits on the corner. Hal is making the point that, I don't know, there's a bakery or something that has a door around a corner of a very busy street he's talking about in Nashua, a highly commercial situation, if I know where he's speaking of. I'm hard put for individuals that live along Route 4, I guess in understanding that they're not, this road dating back to the American Revolution has been the busiest crossroad coming out of Concord going to the seacoast. It has had a variety of businesses along it, primarily residences way back, and it was a dirt road, and was so, I guess, until the early part of the 1900s, if I got it right. But in any case, it's obviously become very busy, and there's a lot of commercial going back and forth. The state capitol all the way to the seacoast, huge truck volume, which is not going away, which makes anybody who lives along there aware of the commercial character of this road now. It's not a pleasant residential neighborhood. I live a mile away from it, and I can hear, and it has to be true for anybody closer, I can hear the trucks go by. And there's a lot of trees and other things between me and the road. I'm using that, and not that I would expect a commercial area to extend back a mile from the road because you can hear something. But I'm saying when you are up on the road, literally, you have to recognize this is a commercial, and it's the primary commercial route in our town. And is going to be into the future, and is going to be where most, and our master plan and so forth, and people that have commented on it have recognized this is going to be where most of, if not all, of our commercial activity is going to occur. I'm a little, I understand the dilemma here, but I also don't understand perhaps why those who live along that road are kind of surprised that there's a commercial interest in the road. 14, 15, 16,000 cars a day, and I don't know, a quarter of them or something, maybe not a quarter, 20% or something are trucks carrying commercial goods. So that's the situation. I'm just hard pressed, Hal. I understand the point you're making in part, except that I don't see where it can be considered a residential neighborhood because you've moved back 100 feet off the road. As I say, not only the sound factor, which is huge, tells you every moment, even into the night, that this is a highly trafficked road and commercial in its nature in part. But I understand maybe that take somebody who lives right on the road, and there's quite a few, and I know some of them that live in some nice homes along the road, but there's no surprise to them that they're living on a commercial road. And to say, oh, I'm in a beautiful residential neighborhood as it was 100 years ago, no, that's not. It wasn't even then, except that they were slow-moving wagons at 10 miles an hour, and that was it. And that was when they were moving fast. So I have difficulty with the idea of calling this a residential neighborhood as some kind of demarcation. As has been pointed out, and a number of people have tested, there's some commercial activity now just nearby, but there was in the past. And times change. It could go entirely residential, I mean, in some fictional future, but it's not that. It's commercial. And if we're expecting to some degree growth in the town, I know there's the idea you can concentrate it, but you can only concentrate it either by arbitrary nature or we don't have districts which we've designated as such. And so when people come to this, commercial interests come to this town, they're going to look wherever. And I'm not sure why we can say to them, oh, you can't go along Route 4 here, there, and everywhere that we happen to give you difficulty on. That's my observation there. And by the way,
Bob?
Yep. Did you finish your point?
That's
okay, thank you.
Okay, if you want to call this a commercial area, 2 churches, a town hall, a school, and 1 commercial building that we never see cars at, the consolidated building.
Oh, yes, the telephone exchange.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you saying the school's not commercial?
No.
No, wait a minute. Let me
Let her finish.
Oh, I'm trying to hear what you're saying. I just asked you a question.
Well, dig out your ears.
Now.
Sorry.
Speak louder. That's another alternative.
We're all being recorded here, please.
My point is, this is not a commercial area in the nature of a credit union, a grocery store, 2 gas stations, and various and sundry other things. This is a quieter, albeit on the very busy Route 4. This is a quieter area. It is not a commercial back and forth all the time like a coffee drive-through would be. It's not. Which means that would very much change the neighborhood.
Okay. Others? Okay. Property values. I think we started to talk about, while we're still in traffic, I told you that we were going to address pedestrians because you brought it up, and we moved on to the neighborhood as an example of that, but if you have a point with pedestrians, bring it up now.
Well, I would just wanted to piggyback on Tim's comments about the students. I mean, based again on what I see, at Dunkin' Donuts and other places where people can buy coffee, my guess is that there's going to be a lot of pedestrians also, and I didn't see really anything to mitigate the safety hazards of multiple groups of people going to a walk-up coffee service. So I do have concerns about the pedestrians also.
I want to point out, I'm going to try to find it quickly here. I'm looking in the traffic report. Page 5 of the original traffic report. Pedestrian activity at the US 4 Bow Lake Road intersection was minimal. 3 pedestrians and 1 bicyclist were observed during the 7 to 9 a.m. count, and none from 3 to 6 p.m. Only 1 bike was observed at the Bow Lake Road Academy Way intersection at 3:15 p.m.
Right. But now add something where people are going to go to get coffee. What's the expectation? That it'll go down?
I don't know.
We weren't presented any data on
I
that.
don't believe there was any.
Go Brown. They'll walk over, they'll drop their books off, walk over, they'll come from the cars, walk over.
The students drink a lot of coffee?
Well, I commented on that.
Lots of other stuff than coffee at a Aroma Joe's, number one. Number two, again, it's too late, but if you wanted an answer to this question, the perfect example in my mind that I'm familiar with was the store across the street from Concord High School, and the incredible amount of hassle they had with students walking over to get maybe some coffee. But I mean, there's a lot of other things coffee style now. Some of them I haven't even tried, and there's other things at these Aroma Joe's. I mean, if you go see, you can get some muffins and different stuff. Is my understanding. I'm not much of a coffee drinker in the day. So I don't really go in and out. I meant to go through one and I forgot. I got busy.
Okay.
But
As far as pedestrians go, again, referring from the traffic impact study, page 23, item F, which is the summary of the recommendations. Provide a pedestrian pathway that extends from the existing sidewalk on Route 4 to the proposed patio area. Install a marked crosswalk across the 2 travel lanes within the site. Okay, this was the original traffic design. The updated traffic design, there is a crosswalk across Bow Lake Road, and the sidewalk runs along like as per our regulations.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I'm just concerned because the volume of traffic's going up, it's doubling
Right.
the wait times, people are going to be frustrated.
Okay.
The people trying to cross are going to be frustrated too, and I think that just adds to the safety issue.
Okay.
But the,
Does that
if I understand, the students, if you're hypothesizing the students are going to do this, get coffee, I mean, when are the times? Lunch break during the day, or I mean, in the morning they're not going to be doing it. They're trying to get to class, or the ones speeding across the intersection. I'm wondering if this is. I mean, there is a sidewalk that comes from the school down. So if the students really, if there was a real situation, which I think is a little strained, of them coming down, yeah, there is a sidewalk. I just don't see where they use it. I accept the idea that during ball games or something, which can be in the evenings or weekends, there's a potential somebody coming over from the ball field. I accept something going on there. But I still find it, but during the school day, I don't see where this is even a realistic concern.
Can I stop
I'm
you
not
there?
saying, and again, I don't know, okay, so the students don't drink coffee, they're hyper already, why, they're not old farts like myself or something, so they're not looking for that extra jolt, I assume, but maybe, and Tim made a point, I mean, there's other things at the Aroma Joe's, okay. I just don't see it as a daytime issue. I think the issue,
Okay.
again, I would go back to traffic as my only concern.
Okay. Let me bring up my last topic that I created, my list that's not exclusive to, or we're not limited to my list, property values. We had testimony by 2 expert witnesses, if you want to call them that, experts, as far as, some, and calls into question as to whether it was consistent or not. Comments on property values. Go ahead, Hal.
It's a question of, is property value an item on our consideration list? I don't think that that's a criteria in terms of whether or not we can deny or not, or approve. I brought up the property appraisals because the applicant's appraiser was very clear. His expectation is a resident's highest use value is going to change to a business. And in my mind, that's a change. But I don't think there's anything that I know of within that list that says we are to consider whether something changes an abutter's property value. If there is, then let's talk about it, but I'd like to know which section it is.
I believe the applicant is, or the abutters are making the statement that by a change in property value, you're changing the neighborhood.
Well, I'm agreeing that there's a change in the neighborhood if this goes in. I wouldn't necessarily agree that it's a result of changing property values.
Yeah.
I mean, not
If
to be contrary, and just, I mean, the obvious is that, let's say this were a successful coffee shop, and somebody else comes along and sees that corner as a potential site for whatever, something commercial venture, the property values may increase of those properties. I mean, but that's so hypothetical that I don't see we have any business. I don't think I have any business anyway making a guess at that. I just can't make sense out of that.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would just say that if the property value went up as a business, I kind of agree that that changes the neighborhood. Beyond that, I've looked at it, and I did read both reports, and it's not a big issue in my mind, not like some of the others,
Okay.
et cetera.
Okay. Betty, anything? You don't have to if you don't feel the need. I just wanted to make sure you had the opportunity.
It does make a change. If it's successful, there's going to be increased traffic. There's going to be chances for more accidents there and everything. If it's not successful, then we've got another empty commercial building to degrade the property values in all of Northwood. I don't think we need any more.
Okay. We've touched on all the topics on my list. Like I said, my list is not exclusive to anyone else. Are there other items of discussion, findings of fact that we would like to discuss on any topic that we haven't discussed already, or things you want to add, rehash? Now's the time to do it.
Well, I guess I'm sort of with Tim on maybe some of the others we discussed weren't the burning issues, but I still am a little bit concerned about the lights from the cars.
As far as the no brakes and the buffer aspect?
Yes. I mean, again, I think about, when the neighbors leave their light on overhead, no, it doesn't directly shine on my house or anything, but you can tell, and it's troublesome. And if it's where the light is actually moving and stuff, even though it's not directly shining on, it's troublesome. And so that, I can understand if it's not part of the regulations that we can consider moving light sources, then we just drop it, but it really concerns me that will be disruptive. especially in the winter in the morning and the winter in the evening when.
And I'm trying to.
And I
ask staff a question and tell me if you're not allowed to answer based on procedural or content. Are there other aspects of the regulations that address Hal's question in that are the impacts of the driveway providing safe and secure access to the site also countered by the idea of vegetative buffers and mitigation. Does that make sense? Are there other regulations that we need to look at that might help to answer that?
You're talking, but we can't hear you.
You can't, sorry. I'm staying within the 6 inches, and just not the wrong way. So I asked staff if there are other regulations that might apply in this case that they could point us to.
So I'm certainly not going to steer you to a specific code section if what you're asking me is, do I, as a planner, think that there are other code sections that apply? I think I've had information in my staff reports that has discussed some of these issues in the past. If there are specific code sections that you would like me to look up and read,
Okay.
I will do that if you tell me what sections you want to hear about.
Okay. That's fine.
But I'm not going to point you to things at this point in the process.
Just good answer. That's why I phrased it that way. Thank you.
Specifically regarding lights, though, I mean, is there any, I guess, that's the point at issue. I mean, is there anything that's left out of the equation that we have or have not referred to regarding lights in the ordinance? Is that what you're after there? Or?
What I was trying to find is, does Hal's point is that the vegetative buffer, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Hal, applies to traffic on the site, and that in this case, vehicular traffic turning into and out of the driveway, and that there is no vegetative buffer between the driveway on the applicant's site and the abutting property, as is required by whatever the regulation is. I'd have to look it up.
Right.
9K14A, I believe.
And I'm only concerned about it from the perspective that it's going to be very disruptive. I understand that they did the best they could in terms of the situation, but from my perspective, lights shining across the street, moving as a result of the traffic going in and out will be very disruptive. And that's why I don't know what the answer is, but I'm not required to come up with the answer.
Correct.
But I'm concerned that we will disrupt that residence. And I guess to that, to Joe's point, we don't have zoning. So from my perspective, I tend to be very careful about infringing on neighbors and abutters because of that. And so I'm actually I'm cautious about that because we don't have the zoning that would sort of segregate that stuff. and that's my concern.
I'm trying to think of an example in town within the last 20 years where the driveway from a commercial site has a residence abutter that is buffered. The one that comes to mind is the exit of Hannaford onto Church Street. There is a well, and that's not even that was a park
Trees there.
residence. Yeah, that's not true either because that's a commercial property across the street on Church Street.
And the other one's soon to be more commercial. Or
Right. But nothing else comes to mind, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means I'm not familiar with it. Jim, go ahead.
It is an interesting question. There's a number of questions, I think, that have come up from this application that it's possible we should look at them in the future. I want to read, this is a letter from Jim Hadley. It says that Basin Properties, Inc., City of Lebanon, gives the case number. The planning board denied the site plan application because it failed to comply with the city traffic regulations and noise impact that the driveway would have on a neighboring property. The Superior Court affirmed the planning board's decision and the Supreme Court affirmed the Superior Court. The planning board provided the applicant with ample time and guidance for bringing this application into compliance. And so that's a good statement and an excellent thing to look at, but I'm not sure that we have any that I can think of regulations in our town about headlight pollution. I mean, we might have light pollution on a building, and every commercial property that I'm aware of that has come in, we make a big deal of wanting the lights to shine down rather than out. I've heard that on many, many occasions. But I've never, and it's not that I'm saying it's not a good question, but I've never seen this come up. I don't believe it came up when Aroma Joe's wanted to move in down by the Northwood place because they were going to, they were going to put in a quite high fence if it was approved, and that would have mitigated that. So it's a good question, but I'm not sure that we in fact have a regulation in our town about that specific issue. It's furthest the expected adverse impact to traffic, noise, and light pollution to abutting properties. But again, I'm not sure that we have anything in our regulations townwide against headlight pollution, and it's kind of an interesting question.
Well, that's why I brought it up relative to the buffer, because if the buffer was continuous, we wouldn't be talking about this.
Well, you also,
And I've certainly written that down, Hal, and I think it's a great question, but again, I don't know how you can put a buffer across a driveway to get into a place.
you're also,
Okay, I'm just going to say it to answer your question. On a suitable site, you would relocate it to the other road.
Yes, maybe
Okay.
so.
That's my point.
Okay.
If this had access via Route 4 into the site and back out of the site onto Route 4, all these things that we talked about tonight would go away.
except for...
But God help us on Route 4.
Exactly, except
I
for the
understand.
regulation that says you have to provide safe and suitable access to the site. And that's, you would, by moving to Route 4, my opinion, you're then negating two-thirds of the safety aspects.
This is part of the dilemma that we had with the previous Aroma Joe's in a very congested location that could not be widened any immediately feasible way, but whether that's in the offing remains to be seen. In that section, Northwood Garage and the restaurant across the street and so forth. So very busy. We had a problem with just pure out-and-out congestion. But there is and it's after the fact, it's not going to it's not going to solve this particular aspect, I don't think. A solution that sometimes where an abutter is offended by something, in this case light, it could be the sight of something. We had this with Daco's, the gravel pit, let's call it, I can't think of the right term for it. Where somebody puts up some kind of he put up a very nice wall, one of the prettiest walls in town now. Well, he didn't put it up actually, but he had it put up. And there is possibilities where across the street, a butter could have a fence or vegetation that would eliminate as I picture it, it would eliminate the light problem. But that's, as I say, that wasn't in our earlier consideration as an important thing. I think, though, behind all of this, there's a couple of other issues that are looming larger than just this light in the driveway matter.
Okay, let's deal with the larger issues.
Right.
Because it is 10 of 9. What I have heard from the board is traffic is the driving issue. That, speaking for myself, the existing nature of that intersection is poor as is without a build, and building the findings of fact are that we would be rubbing salt into the wound, if you want to call it that way, of an existing bad intersection. How do we want to address that? I believe we've deliberated fairly well on all the topics that we've brought up, and it comes back to traffic. What I would suggest is that we find in the regulation what aspects of traffic are not met or not mitigated to begin with. That's based on a sense of the board that the application does not meet the traffic design or has not mitigated traffic design. If someone disagrees with that, they're certainly welcome to say so.
So you're talking about, I'm sorry, so you're talking about the first part there where it says street access, streets and access. So
it's up to the board to determine which aspects, if we agree that traffic is a problem and it has not been mitigated by this design, then it's our responsibility, unless we approve the application, to either, well, we're given a choice. We can approve the application. We can approve with conditions. We can request a redesign of the aspects of the application that have not been mitigated or don't meet the regulations, or we can deny it. If we deny it, we need to find what aspects of the regulations are not met, or which regulations are not being met by this design.
Well, I'd start with IXC1.
Which I'll read it. Under streets and access, all developments shall make adequate provision for safe and suitable access to an existing public street, or shall make provisions for the construction and dedication of a public street in order to obtain safe and suitable access for the development site. I don't think that applies here because, well, I shouldn't say that. The aspects that don't apply, which is page 32 or page 13 of 32 of the checklist that James had set out.
Can you give me
The latter half of that regulation would not apply, or shall make provisions for the construction and dedication of a public street in order to obtain safe and suitable access to the development site. They're not building a public street. Yeah, being heard okay?
I got the same problem. That's interesting. So I'll have to figure out. So I have 24 pages, so my print is smaller probably now. We had this a couple weeks ago,
just
remember?
go by the, can you go by the
Where-
Roman
where I
numerals?
had-
Yes, it's Roman.
The minutes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so go by Roman numeral. It's Roman 9 C1.
C1, okay, thank you.
Yep. But that's a good reminder.
I forgot about it till...
Okay, and essentially, by pointing that out, you would be saying what aspects does this application not meet?
I guess we'd say it's unsafe. Actually,
Well,
I
my
guess we should-
observation on that would be that we could say it's unsafe now. So it's a relative, it's a moving target here. Because, I mean, we've had testimony from various opponents in this case that find that it's, as you've expressed, we would be making a bad situation worse. So that's really, it's not a matter where it goes from being safe now to unsafe. If you want to make that argument, I don't see that as supportable. But you can make the argument it's becoming, as you did with the hurricane kind of thing, though Category 5 is a wipeout, is unsafe. And getting, well, it's problematical now, and getting to where it might become unsafe. I mean, that seems to be what argument is being made here. The traffic report doesn't say this becomes an unsafe location. It doesn't
Correct.
say that anywhere.
Correct.
And the CMA report in the Department of Transportation did not in any way say that that's where this is going. What we have here, I mean, and it's a legitimate concern, is that this is going to become more congested. There is no debate about that whatsoever. But the traffic coming down this road, going to the coffee shop, is already on the road. They would be going to work.
Rephrase then, Joe.
Yeah, but
I'll rephrase.
Okay.
Well,
This application would not mitigate the safety concerns that it increases, or the safety problems that it increases.
well, then I would just ask you, I mean, that's a point. I would ask you, though, does if a subdivision goes back on Bow Lake Road, 10 more houses, 20 more houses, 50 more houses, all at once or in some time frame that's close, is that not going to increase activity, traffic, and danger? I mean,
Yeah.
So if you go down that road it almost seems like you wind up where no new development is possible because any scenario is going to increase more traffic. And I don't debate that. And your concern is there.
And so, like, for example, on the elderly housing,
Yeah.
questions came up.
That's a good example.
Do
Yeah.
we need a traffic study at the two intersections of Route 4 that the elderly housing will use?
That's another point.
So, yeah, so we would consider that.
Well, maybe, yeah.
And, we did. So, yes, I think, we would, for all applications, we would consider whether that causes problems to downstream.
So where's okay, now you're referring to a traffic study on a project that we're currently considering. And yeah, fair enough. And it is a perfectly good point, I think. But I would say, because something increases traffic, which I don't think is debatable, is it going over the threshold that we need be concerned about? And that was the point of having a traffic study, which comes back to us and says, yes, there's more traffic, yes, there's going to be slowing down of the people negotiating that intersection. Is that not a non-functioning situation? Does it go into the future as not very workable, or is it, I don't want to say merely, because as I said already, I would be bothered, is it merely an added inconvenience to those traveling in the morning? In other words, let's put this another way. If those people are going to be inconvenienced, if they went to work 3 minutes earlier, because that's the longest time frame that most of them are going to be delayed, that's not the average. If they were just 3 minutes, if they all left work 3 minutes earlier, is the situation go away? Maybe. It does from a technical standpoint. But are we going to get them to do that? No. Most people leave late and they're bothered that or just barely with enough time, and then they're bothered that they're slowed up. That's the way it works.
Sorry, did you have your hand up?
You can go first.
Okay. What I would suggest is maybe consider Roman 9C2B, which I'll read. Wherever, in the opinion of the planning board, traffic generated by a development will adversely impact existing public streets or the intersection of public streets, the board may require improvements to be made to such streets and intersections in an effort to mitigate such impacts.
Hold on a second. Where are you reading from?
I just noticed that on the checklist, Roman 9C2, which I just read, is not on the checklist. We go from C1 to C3, D.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking these were... Okay,
So-
that might explain one of my other questions then, too.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm only dealing with a half a deck here. In more ways than one, I guess.
Yes, okay, let me read it again.
Sorry.
Or, James, do you want to read it?
Would you like me to read all of
C2?
C2?
Yes.
So C2 is as follows. Required improvements for major and minor site plans, paragraph A. Wherever, in the opinion of the planning board, safe and satisfactory access cannot be gained from an existing public street, the board may require the construction and dedication of a public street. Paragraph B. Wherever, in the opinion of the planning board, traffic generated by a development will adversely impact existing public streets or the intersection of public streets, the board may require improvements to be made to such streets and intersections in an effort to mitigate such impacts. Paragraph C. Wherever, in the opinion of the planning board, traffic is sufficient to require driveways/roads to site developments serving the public shall be designed and constructed in accordance with the road design standards detailed in the Northwood subdivision regulations. That's
Thank you.
the entirety of section C2.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
So, I printed this out at home, and for some reason I don't seem to have it. I wished I did. RSA 674, this is the state RSA 674:44, comma, Roman 2, dot, parentheses, A, provide for a safe, expansion of the use of the site and guard against such conditions that would involve danger. I wonder, A, could somebody pull that up on the computer?
Roman, which one? 2A?
And let's look at the whole thing.
Yes.
I thought this, in all honesty, pertained to the issue.
Site plan, again, reading from title, whatever that is, 64, Planning and Zoning, Chapter 674, Local Land Use Planning and Regulatory Power, Site Plan, Section 674:44. Roman 2, the site plan review regulations which the planning board adopts may A, provide for the safe and attractive development or change or expansion of use of the site and guard against such conditions as would involve danger or injury to health, safety, or prosperity by reason of, 1, inadequate drainage or conditions conducive to flooding of the property or that of another, 2, inadequate protection of the quality of groundwater. Which one in specific are you looking for?
Pollution, noise, such as noise.
Okay, because there's a whole list of eighth. I can keep reading if you want.
No, that's good. It's certainly going to, some light pollution
Well,
that we talked about.
it's specific. Okay, here it is. Sorry,
Noise
specific.
and undue dangers.
Yes, it's actually parentheses 3, undesirable and preventable elements of pollution such as noise, smoke, soot, particulates, or any other discharge into the environment which might prove harmful to persons, structures, or adjacent properties.
I thought we had some wording similar to that in some of our ordinances
Yes,
or
we do.
someplace, but I couldn't find it.
I mean, that supersedes our regulations because it's state law.
Bob, that's state enabling legislation.
Oh,
So it says
true, yes.
site plan regulations that you adopt may do those
Okay.
things. It does not say they shall do.
Thank you. Okay.
May do these things as far as
Yes, may
regulating
address
these
those.
issues. or these items.
Correct. So that RSA is state enabling legislation that allows towns to adopt site plan regulations, and it includes examples of things that you may choose to regulate. But the contents of that RSA are not in and of themselves the regulations. So where that may give you the power to develop site plan regulations as you see fit, you can't enforce 674-44 as the statute upon which you are reviewing. You are reviewing based on the site plan regulations that you've adopted in accordance with this RSA.
Okay. Thank you. That makes at least sense to me. I can't speak for anybody else. But did that make sense as James explained it? That RSA essentially says that the planning board is authorized to generate, develop regulations that may address these things, not, so it's not a you shall or shall not. Okay. What I'm going through is I'm coming back to 9C2B. The board may require improvements to be made to such streets and intersections in an effort to mitigate such impacts. And C1, safe and suitable access. As let's see if I can find that exact thing. Yes, Roman 9, C2, or C1, general requirements, all developments shall make adequate provision for safe and suitable access to an existing public street, or shall make provisions for the construction and dedication of a public street in order to obtain safe and suitable access to the development site.
As I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
Yep. let me,
The fact is that they almost cannot, or they cannot. And the only answer would possibly be, which DOT is not interested in, is a traffic light.
that, I wouldn't even go that far, because that's speculation, and we'd be designing it, and, well, the traffic, DOT, and I know Mr. Pernaugh has stated that the traffic volume for a traffic light on Bow Lake Road is not significant enough to warrant a traffic light. As well, and I do recall this from his statement, that DOT is generally frowned on, if I can put it that way, reluctant to slow traffic with a traffic light on Route 4. But in a case like ours, where there is the volume is not coming onto Route 4 does not even meet the standard for putting one in. That's what I'm finding for those two. Let me reread Roman 9C1. General requirements. All developments shall make adequate provision for safe and suitable access to an existing public street, or shall make provisions for the construction and dedication of a public street in order to obtain safe and suitable access to the development site where an adjacent existing street from which access is gained is deemed substandard by the planning board. The upgrading of said street shall be provided to the applicant. That's not applicable in this case, that sentence. Where traffic from a proposed development will adversely impact an adjacent street or intersection, provision shall be made for the mitigation of said impacts by the applicant.
Say the last part again, please.
Where traffic from a proposed development will adversely impact an adjacent street or an intersection, provision shall be made for the mitigation of said impacts by the applicant.
Okay, so what's the definition of mitigation?
The reduction, moderation in
The design has to handle the changes. If it's bringing changes, the design has to handle it.
Okay.
Well, that item, I mean, there's been a large effort by this applicant to address mitigating, which means reducing the effect of or lessening the impact. I mean, we've been discussing this a lot. In addition to the pullover lane, I don't know what that's being called, and then obviously the big one is the turn lane and the redesign of the corner and the sidewalk and so forth. I mean, those are mitigating elements for sure.
That's why I asked
they have a mitigating effect. Let me just put it that way. So we can't say nothing's being done to mitigate the situation, because there's actually quite a bit of effort.
Well, I want to make a point on that, Joe, just so you see my perspective. There's things to mitigate some of the traffic problems. Mr. Pernaugh said that none of them actually change his numbers. So from that perspective, I am reluctant to agree. The second part is that, in my mind, mitigation means if somebody's going to do something, they need to mitigate it so it's back to where it was before.
That's not what mitigate means. I mean, it just isn't. I'm sorry.
Well, I understand that there could be, and that's why I asked what's the definition of mitigation. And in my mind, doing something that doubles or triples the safety risk doesn't go in the right direction. It goes in the wrong direction. So yes, maybe without the mitigation it would have been 5 or 6 times worse. So now it's only 2 or 3 times worse. But in my mind, mitigation involves, getting you closer back to zero or net sum gain than a doubling or tripling. That's what really is stuck in, that's where I'm really stuck.
Okay, I would I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Joe.
Can I just reply on this? I don't think Mr. Pernow said that, for instance, the right-hand turn lane going onto Route 4 from Bow Lake had no effect. I don't think he ever said that. I think it does have an effect. In fact, he talked about the numbers as that by allowing a larger Q number on that extension, that turn lane extension, that was mitigating or improving the numbers. He didn't say the numbers
He didn't change the numbers. He did not change the numbers.
He was talking about total traffic. That's where I think
He didn't change his traffic study numbers.
No, but he did.
Hal, I don't understand your statement. He didn't change his traffic study numbers, his design numbers?
No, his numbers in terms of the traffic impact. I asked him specifically last meeting.
From when to when? And from what to what?
He first did the one, then he did the second one, and I said,
Yes.
does anything change, does the right-hand turn lane or anything like that change those numbers? He said, no, they're already included in that.
But those
Okay.
numbers
Yeah.
had already reduced the wait times. You see, I think that's what I don't want to speak for him here. I think that's what he was replying to. But because, just common sense of this, there's a number, new cars have been added to this turn lane, and so that means there's going to be a faster egress for those cars coming down Bow Lake that want to go to Concord or wherever, and they're going to be, the common sense of it's going to improve, and I think he said as much. I think, though, you're right in one sense that he said the numbers didn't change.
For the left-hand turn,
Correct.
because...
Left-hand turn is different.
Correct.
Right, but that's the concern. The people turning right,
Oh, okay.
everybody that spoke in public hearings said, try to make a left-hand turn at that time. And that's where I go back to, the standard is set by the locals,
That's okay.
Well,
and
Yep.
the locals have spoken.
Okay. I don't want to hash.
the reason we commissioned a traffic study was to get some hard numbers that we can deal with instead of anecdotal. I'm sorry, anecdotal is good to have. It's a perspective and it's a concern of people, various people both ways. I understand that, and that is valuable, but it is not what you make, it seems to me, a real decision on if you have numbers that tell you real data. That's all we can make a decision on. They did a traffic count. They went by the national studies, but this actual traffic count showed it was a less problematic.
We're restating things that we've already stated multiple times tonight. What I'm trying to get the board to do, because the chair does not make motions, is to prepare a motion that this application either does or does not meet certain regulations. The two that I have come up with are 9C1 on safety, which I think I read. Yes, we just read that, two parts of it. All development shall make adequate provision for safe and suitable access to an existing public street, or shall make provisions for the construction and dedication of a public street in order to obtain safe and suitable access to the development site. Last sentence, where traffic from a proposed development will adversely impact an adjacent street or intersection, provision shall be made for the mitigation of said impacts by the applicant. And Roman, in that same section, 2B, required improvements for major and minor site plans. Wherever, in the opinion of the planning board, traffic generated by a development will adversely impact existing public streets or the intersection of public streets, the board may require improvements to be made to such streets and intersections in an effort to mitigate such impacts. We have, I believe, all five of us have said that to some degree in some impacts of this, specifically to left turn lane coming out of Bow Lake Road onto Route 4 eastbound, that this application does not mitigate the impacts acceptably. We're looking at a 45-second increase in left turn traffic, wait times.
A doubling.
Pardon me?
A doubling. 45 seconds doesn't, for me, put it into perspective as much as saying it's going to be twice as bad.
That's based on 2020 standards.
Yeah.
Yes, in 2030 standards, it's still an impact of an increase of wait times of, I think, 38 seconds. But the existing no-build situation there is already at, I believe it's 2 minutes. I know it's over 100 seconds. I'd have to look it up. And I don't want to take the time. That's what I myself find this application doesn't meet is Roman 9 C2B. That as well, we have an existing level of service at F for this intersection, and that there are no improvements offered by this application. It remains at level of service F. So that is not mitigated. It remains the same.
Well,
Is
maybe I'll just add this as a, you're correct in what your observations.
That's just my belief that that's what
right.
happens with
I
this.
mean,
But
yeah,
go ahead.
No, your observations, your statement, Mr. Pernow reinforced that essentially, that you're in the service area of F, which is not, as you learn, not failing. It's just
Yes.
simply a category that's not as desirable as one of the.
Correct.
So, but it's a doable one, and it's a workable one in all areas in New Hampshire and around the country. So the question becomes, those numbers, do they, as they get irritated, exacerbated, there's more traffic, no question. At the key time, there's 40-something cars going in there that have to be dealt with. There's an added traffic flow coming back out, no question. Though most of them are probably headed to Portsmouth at that point.
Make your point.
Portsmouth, no, Concord, I misspoke. So, that said, though, it's still within that service level of acceptability according to traffic standards. I don't deny people are being delayed further. It's no question. But I'm saying that the traffic standards that supposedly we make final decisions on of reasonableness, I don't see that they've been violated.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you, Joe.
Are there any other, are we just going to key in on this one issue, the safety of anything that?
That's up to the board. We've talked about a lot of things. We need to make a determination of whether other aspects of this application meet the regulations. We need to, every one of us has spoken that we have a bad traffic situation. If there are other aspects of this application that we can tie to a regulation, we've talked about Roman landscaping, which is Roman 9K14A, having plants over a fence. We've talked about lighting in the vegetative buffer.
Right.
Those are the two that I think we have come to have questions on this application.
Well, I think the other one is the change in the neighborhood.
Yep, okay.
And I don't know which one that is, Bob.
Means I have to look it up.
I thought,
Okay, and that is zoning ordinance, Roman 5B1A1 by its nature or design or through the use of vegetative or topographical buffers, the use will not substantially alter the character of the area in which it is proposed to be sited.
And that's not on here either?
That's in the zoning ordinance.
That's the vegetative buffer one, Bob? Or is that the change in neighborhood one?
That's the change in neighborhood one.
Oh, okay. And I don't know, maybe I'm standing all alone on the buffer one, but that still bothers me.
I'm trying, just to touch on that briefly, because it is 9:25 and my day started at 3 a.m., thank you. I'm having problems with your interpretation of it because I can't think of a case where someone pulling out, providing safe and access to the site. Typically, you want your driveway to meet the public road at a 90-degree angle. You're looking at mitigating aspects across the driveway on the abutter's property from their headlights. The only way I can think of doing that is to realign the driveway so that it is, or move the driveway so it is not directly across the street.
Or create,
Because it's off-site, you can't do.
I agree with you, Bob,
So-
as far as the applicant, but, or create a condition whereby maybe, as was offered, in fact, at the previous Aroma Joe situation, where the applicant was going to pay for the buffer along the property, and that could be the case. And I know it's after the fact and not germane now anymore, but but if that were the only issue, let's just say, the applicant could obviously create a buffer if the across the street abutter was willing, a buffer that would appeal to them. I mean, a light buffer in this case. So
Okay.
that would be but it's after the fact.
Yep, okay. So those are the three that we've brought up. Roman 9C1, Roman C2B, or Roman 9 C2B, and zoning ordinance B1, 5B, Roman 5B1A1. No change in essentially no change in the neighborhood, or by its nature design or through the vegetative use of the use will not substantially alter the character of the area in which is proposed to be sited. What I would suggest to the board is that, well, let me back up. Are we in agreement that those are applicable? You want me to read them again?
I'm fine.
Joe?
Go ahead and read them again, just so, I'm
Okay.
sorry, Bob.
That's
I
okay.
know- I know the clock is ticking.
Yep.
Partly because you were dropping out there when I was listening to the...
I moved it, so, Northwood site development, or site plan regulations, Roman 9C1, general requirements. All developments shall make adequate provision for safe and suitable access to an existing public street, or shall make provisions for the construction and dedication of a public street in order to obtain safe and suitable access to the development site, where an adjacent existing street from which access is gained is deemed substandard by the planning board. The upgrading of said street shall be provided by the applicant. Where traffic from a proposed development will adversely impact an adjacent street or intersection, provision shall be made for the mitigation of said impacts by the applicant.
I didn't mean for you to read the whole thing, Bob.
Okay.
You did a shorthand version of it, and that's all I was...
The last statement of Roman C1, or Roman 9C1, where traffic from an proposed development will adversely impact an adjacent street or intersection, provision shall be made for the mitigation of said impacts by the applicant. Yep, and then we're at Roman 9C2B, wherever in the opinion of the planning board, traffic generated by a development will adversely impact existing public streets or the intersection of public streets. The board may require improvements to be made to such streets and intersection in an effort to mitigate such impacts. And we have let me pull up the other one. This is zoning ordinance V1, Roman 5B1 performance criteria. Item sub parentheses A, by its nature or design or through the use of vegetative or topographical buffers, the use will not substantially alter the character of the area in which it is proposed to be sited. Okay. Agreement that those three are applicable? Or not? Joe, anything? Or subset thereof?
I'm not, I don't find the one regarding vegetation buffers and all, I just don't see how that's not, that's still an issue.
Okay.
It seems to me, for me, that's...
Is there not another criteria that just addresses changing the neighborhood?
That's the zoning ordinance.
That's the only one?
That's the only one that I know of.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I thought there was one specifically that you can't change the nature of the neighborhood, but I might be wrong on that.
Not that I'm aware of. That's the only one I found. But that's just me. And I'm only one member of the board. Tim, you have?
So, I'm not,
I'm putting you on the spot. You don't have to be put
no,
on
I
the
don't
spot.
mind being on the spot. That doesn't bother me one bit. I really like the first two. I am not one that thinks that you should just throw all the mud you can and hoping that something sticks. It's just not my way of doing something. So I'm not, and I do understand, it took me a while, but I do understand Hell's Point with the lights.
Excuse me, Tim. I want to make
Changing the
clear.
neighborhood and stuff like that.
I'm concerned about the change in the neighborhood, but
I
if that's not a clear regulation, then we need to take it off.
And
Well,
and that's
that's
my
what we're
point.
trying to make it.
That's what I'm getting. I really,
Can't hear?
I really do agree with the first two. I don't agree with the third one. I think we should limit what we're doing to things that are defendable, and I certainly think the first two are.
Okay. Hal? Or Betty? Whoever.
Yeah, I'd say I would have to agree with Tim if he's basing it on the fact that it includes reference to the buffer. I was more referring to the buffer as being continuous and not causing a light problem. I was under the impression, and maybe this is Tim's point, that this one was to deal with that it changes the neighborhood. There was a lot of discussion about it changing the neighborhood, but if that's not the right one relative to it changing the neighborhood, or we don't have one, then as Tim said, we got to drop it.
Bob, which one was that?
Which one was what?
the one about substantially altering the character of it?
That was the zoning ordinance, Roman 5B 1A. By its nature or design, or through the use of vegetative or topographical buffers, the use will not substantially alter the character of the area in which it is proposed to be sited.
By its nature,
Yes.
that doesn't necessarily mean the buffers, correct? By its nature or,
By its nature or design, or through the use of vegetative or topographical buffers, the use will not substantially alter the character of the area in which it is proposed to be sited.
and by its nature and design, it does.
That's our determination.
Yeah.
Or is to
That-
be our determination.
Yep.
We get to decide that aspect of it.
So that one is accurate, Al.
Well, I think you and I agree on that, but I think Tim, Bob, and Joe disagree on that.
I would
I'm
not speak.
sorry, I didn't mean to speak
That's
for
okay.
everybody, but I was just
Yeah.
interpreting the comments. Sorry.
Yes. Interpreting comments, it sounds as if, I've stated that I think the traffic itself is a substantial change in the neighborhood by its use. Makes it a change in use of the neighborhood. Sorry, a change in the neighborhood, just by increasing traffic. But that doesn't I'm one
I don't
person.
mind that it's there. I'm just not sure how easy dependable it is, but I am not a lawyer.
I'm not a lawyer either.
Yeah, so-
But we do have the authority to make this
mean-
determination.
If we have some people that are strongly wanting it, I'm not
Yep.
going to have a problem with that.
Okay. I have, Betty, you have not spoken on the three that are up for chance, or up for discussion. Two concerning traffic and one concerning the change in the neighborhood.
I believe they're all pertinent.
Okay. Okay, so what I have for a sense of the board so far is that for Roman 9C1, which is I'm not going to read it again, that all members of the board find this application, and when I say ask for a name to find it applicable, I did not ask to say whether you find this application meets it or not. I'm just finding it applicable. So I'm going to do two things. We find it applicable, and then we're going to go through with a sense of the board and say, yes, does this application, in your feeling, meet the criteria for it?
That a given item may apply, applicable, you're saying? So a given
So-
item may apply.
Those three regulations, the three regulations do apply in this case, which is Roman C1, which is the safe access to the site from a public street. Roman 9 C2B.
But I'm a little confused by the procedural distinction you're making between the application and all of the regulations that we have in site plan and or the pertinent
Yes,
ones in
true.
zoning
Good point.
apply to the application.
Yes, they do apply. In a case like, it's not that they don't apply the application, it's do they apply, does the board want to include them in a decision, is what I'm trying to make. The next point would be
Would it be
whether
fair to
this
say these
application-
items, in your sense of it, are taking precedent or in a priority order? These are the ones that we have put the most discussion on? Or-
I can back it up and say, we redo this and say, okay, Joe, to use you as an example, does this application meet Roman 9C1, which is a safe and suitable aspect of access to the site? and go through and get a sense of the board from that. Trying to craft a motion for either denial or approval or modification.
I think there's one other procedural way that I could see approaching it.
Okay.
That, yeah, if you feel that you have some items that people agree on and there are some other items that you are questioning whether or not to include, if a motion includes only the consensus items and then amendments to that motion focus on any specific things to add to or remove from that, that would give you an opportunity to vote on an individual item for whether or not it's included in the motion. And that would give you a clear vote record as to whether or not to add to your list.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sounds, yes? Okay. Chair doesn't make motions.
So we're making a motion on the first two?
You can make a motion however you would like.
So I'll try. Bear with me. I make a motion that we deny this application based on regulation Roman numeral 9C1 having to do with safe access to the public street, and Roman numeral 9C2B. We currently have a service level of F, and it remains at an F. It hasn't mitigated, the plan hasn't mitigated the traffic concerns that we have.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
I have a question for James. At what point do we consider amendments?
If you wish to amend that motion, you would follow with a motion to amend during the discussion, so before you have voted on that motion.
So we're in discussion now?
We're in discussion now.
Okay, I'd like to consider amending that to include the other item that at least I raised.
The neighborhood change?
Yes, please.
Okay, which is Roman, or zoning ordinance, Roman.
BB1.
Yep, VB1A1. Okay, do we have a second on the amendment? Okay,
Second.
so, okay, let me get this. Sorry, for the record, Mr. Jandeber proposed the original motion, and I
I
think
seconded.
Hal Kreider seconded it, and then Mr. Kreider proposed an amendment, seconded by Betty Smith. Okay, so we are discussing the amendment to add to the denial motion
I understand what it's-
zoning ordinance Roman B1, 5B1A1. Okay. And I'm assuming that the language means that the application does not meet that zoning ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Repeat, if you would, I'm sorry, the key element of that anyway? I'm
That
missing.
is that the application does not meet, changes the nature of the neighborhood, to summarize it. Character of the area. Discussion on the change in neighborhood?
Well, at this point, I'm not inclined to discuss this much more. I've already expressed the fact that I think the neighborhood as it's been defined two different ways, but the neighborhood as realistically existing is a Route 4 neighborhood, and I'm sorry, I just can't make this a residential neighborhood.
Okay.
So I find it
Thank you.
wanting.
That's fine. Further discussion? Anyone else?
It is the neighborhood. It has not
speak in the mic.
had,
Into the mic,
it
please.
has not had a fast-paced people in and out business to this date. So it would substantially, significantly alter the character of the neighborhood.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I guess I need to record votes. Do we need to do votes on this, or for the motion?
We do need to vote on
Do you need
the
to vote? Are you-
amendment to the motion.
Are you recording?
We do not need to do a roll call vote
Oh, that's right.
because we are
So used to
entirely
that.
in person. So
Thank
you
you.
can call
Okay.
the yeas
It
and the
has
nays.
been a while.
I am taking
It has
notes.
been a while, gee. Okay. All those in favor of adding the Roman B1A1 change in the neighborhood zoning ordinance to the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay. Okay, now we are back to the original amended motion, which is that
All three.
this application does not meet Roman 9C1, Roman 9C2B, and zoning ordinance Roman 5B1A1.
Right.
Okay? Discussion? Hearing none. All those in, well, let me see, we're at the motion. Do we have any procedural things that are remaining before we vote on this?
No, the motion is to deny the application, so a yes vote denies the application. A no vote would cancel the motion, but it would not in and of itself indicate approval of the application. So if
Correct.
this motion fails, we're still talking.
Okay, people are clear? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to deny on the 3 regulations read? Okay. Those opposed? Okay. Betty, I didn't see your hand. Yeah, you were in
Yes.
favor. Okay. Whoops. Okay. Okay. The motion
Chair,
has
would you
approved.
announce the outcome on the record? For those that
For the
may already be
record, yes,
listening?
for the record, the motion to deny this application on site plan regulations Roman 9C1, Roman 9C2B, and zoning ordinance Roman 5B1A1 is 4-1 in favor of denying the application. That would then
So
close deliberation.
it would. From here, I will prepare a notice of decision. I've noted the 3 code sections that you cited. The short version of the reasons that you cited will appear in the notice itself, but the notice will also include a reference to the minutes from this meeting for the detailed deliberations and findings of fact that you conducted over the course of this evening.
Okay. Sounds good.
Do we, Mr. Chair, do we have an opportunity for other business at some little point?
Tonight?
No.
Yeah,
No.
just very briefly.
I don't think we had anything on the agenda. Jim.
There's nothing
No,
on
it's
the
not
agenda.
other business. It doesn't have to be on the agenda.
What's the nature of the other business?
Just to tell you is to state what I have in mind. Do you give me 1 minute? Unheard
Sure.
of.
1 minute.
All right. We have obviously, as everybody knows, certainly the board members, we have a longstanding chairman departing, and I simply would like to offer my thank you to him for his service. We all, as members of various committees and boards and all, provide some participation in the effort to do democracy in some, just to honor the intention of a democratic local community trying to do its best, and it requires participation of various people. And this is one of the several jobs, actually most of them, even including the select board, which little stipends involved, but where people volunteer their time. And it's an admirable enterprise, and it has a lot to do with making a democracy work. So Bob has been somebody who's certainly put in his time, and he's done it, in my opinion, above average. He's, I guess, if he was one of his students, he might be grading them A or even better. So,
Level of service F.
but I just want to commend him for that. I appreciate it. We've had our differences, he and I, and as he has with, I guess, other board members, but certainly we've had differences on issues, but I've never faulted him for not doing an above-average effort. And one of the last thing I would say about it is what I appreciate, maybe more than anything as to what I just said, is that Bob is always conducting himself as a gentleman. And I think that is extremely valuable in any one of the boards or committees, that he has always treated the people that came before him in a respectful manner, and dealt with them in a way that gave them, I think, a full and best opportunity to say whatever they had to say. And I think that's an above-average hallmark. And I'd just like to thank you.
Okay,
Well done, Bob.
appreciate it.
Bob, I
Keep
have
in mind, I'm still an alternate.
I have one quick question.
Sure.
Please don't crucify me.
No, I'm a gentleman.
Would it be appropriate, yes, you are. Would it be appropriate at this time to nominate the chair for the rest of the year?
I would suggest that we keep that for the regular meeting.
Regular meeting.
Okay.
That was
That's fine.
when we would typically undertake election of officers, so,
No.
what is it, a week from tomorrow?
The 24th.
24th.
That was quick.
Please.
Yes,
They're
that
getting
was
more
quick.
frequent. I don't know what's going on.
You handled that very well.
Motion
Okay.
to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
Second,
I second
third,
it.
fourth, and fifth, and we can be out of here.
I really enjoyed meeting in
Okay,
meeting
thank
like
you.
this again.
We are adjourned at 9:50.
Great job. That was a tough one.
Same here.
Which way?
Thank you.
Maybe there.
Well,
You don't know, but you did your job,
thank you. That's,
and everyone handled it very well.
thank you.
Hey, wow, that was spectacular. Really.
Oh, shut up.
There's since now I've been involved.
Hal, your mic is still live.
That's what's there.
Yeah.
As a technical
Thank you all.
point. When he's referring to number 5, Roman numeral 5, this is not the page. What's
Well, I believe